Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when France was still licking its wounds from the Great War, when the countryside rolled quietly under soft twilight skies, and men like Lucien Moreau seemed like nothing more than salt-of-the-earth vintners. But you and I, we're not buying that. Picture this. A sleepy vineyard in the Bordeaux countryside. Rows of vines stretch across a misty field. A lantern flickers in a cellar window. Below that peaceful earth, barrels line cool stone walls. But not all of them are filled with wine. Some hide secrets made of steel. It's 1929, and the world is unsteady. France is dancing on the edge of another political unraveling. Revolutions simmer across borders, and in one particular village, a quiet man with deep pockets and deeper silence is tucking away something far more volatile than Merlot. You probably won't survive this story, at least not if you were standing too close to the wrong cork at the wrong time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where and when you're listening. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Lucien Moreau doesn't look like a man with a criminal record. That's mostly because, technically, he doesn't have one. His hands are stained with grape must, not blood. His papers are clean. His taxes meticulously filed. And his vineyard? A modest, aging estate nestled in the Saint-Emilion hills, with nothing but birdsong and the soft creak of wind through trellises to disturb the peace. But beneath his boots, there's a cellar. And beneath the cellar, more cellar. The previous owner had built a second level, supposedly for temperature control. Lucien, a man with few questions and fewer visitors, has repurposed it for, well, let's just say it's not temperature controlled anymore. It's weapons controlled. When he bought the property 6 years ago, no one batted an eye. His wife had died in childbirth. He said he needed quiet, and Saint-Emilion offers quiet in spades. The land is generous, the soil rich, the neighbors distant but polite. Most of them would describe Lucien as solide, dependable, unremarkable. The kind of man who'd hand you a bottle of red with a nod and return to pruning vines without another word. But the world above is shifting. Just 2 villages over, there are whispers of protests, small at first. A factory strike. A pamphlet nailed to a church door. People mutter about the government, about inflation, about how the war ended a decade ago, but the pain never quite did. Lucien keeps his head down. Mostly, he visits the market every Thursday, sells his wine through a cooperative in Bordeaux, drives an old Citroën that starts only on the 3rd try, and he never entertains visitors past dusk. When Madame Larocque lost her husband and offered Lucien her tarte aux pommes with just a little too much enthusiasm, he smiled politely and shut the door. Warmly, but firmly, because Lucien has guests already. They just don't stay upstairs. One night in early spring, something shifts. He's in the cellar, lining the floor with sandbags, not for moisture, but to muffle sound. From the staircase above, a creak. He freezes. The rats have been quiet lately, and this sound has weight. Boot weight. He snuffs the oil lamp, waits in the dark. A minute later, a voice, whispered, unmistakable. Lucien, it's Henri Moreau. Lucien's younger brother, a former soldier, a current liability. He hasn't been home in almost a year, and when he left, it was with clenched fists and muttered threats about the state and its cruelty. He was always the loud one, the one who read Marx in public. the one who knew where to get dynamite if you needed it fast and cheap. Lucien climbs the stairs slowly, opens the cellar door just wide enough to let Henri through. Henri looks rough, dirty coat, unshaven, but his eyes, always too bright, too hungry, are burning with purpose. "I need a place to stay," he says. "Just a few days." Lucien says nothing, just steps aside. That's the night everything changes. Again. You see, Henri doesn't come alone. He brings a satchel. And in that satchel, 3 pistols, 2 sets of forged papers, and a map that includes parts of France most locals never need to think about. Mountain passes, border trails, names of men written in code. The vineyard, once a refuge, becomes something else. Lucien doesn't ask questions. He hasn't, since the war. Questions are for people who have time to care about the answers. Henri eats quickly, sleeps during the day, and vanishes at dusk. Lucien doesn't follow him. But in the mornings, he finds footprints in the dewy grass that don't belong to deer or vineyard workers. Bigger, heavier, and not alone. By the end of the week, Henri is gone again, leaves nothing behind but a single note. More soon. Get barrels ready. Barrels, not bottles. That's the moment Lucien walks downstairs to the second cellar, wipes the dust off one of the old brandy crates, and pulls out a crowbar. The crate, as it turns out, isn't empty. It holds a disassembled submachine gun, 2 boxes of ammunition, and a small cloth pouch of gold francs. Payment, perhaps, or incentive. The fact historians still debate today is why Lucien helped at all. Some say he was simply afraid of Henri. Others think he quietly shared his brother's revolutionary leanings, but didn't wear them on his sleeve. Then again, many people still think that Henri was working for a foreign cause, Russian, Spanish, or something murkier, and Lucien was just caught in the wake. So what do you think? Was he a reluctant accomplice, or always part of the plan? In either case, Lucien begins preparing the cellar. And this time, it isn't for a new vintage. That spring, the vines bloom as usual. The neighbors drink and toast as usual. But behind the locked cellar door, something new is fermenting, and it smells like war. The cellar door never creaks. Not anymore. Lucien has sanded it smooth and oiled the hinges with the same care he gives to his corking tools. A squeaky door draws attention. And attention, now more than ever, is dangerous. Since Henri's visit, Lucien's routines have shifted, subtly but precisely. He wakes before dawn, checks the vineyard perimeter not for pests or mold, but for footprints. He speaks less at market, nods more, and has taken to storing certain crates under tarps instead of stacking them with the others. His old radio, left from before the war, plays quietly when he's in the cellar. Not for entertainment, but to mask the clinking of metal against wood. The submachine gun he uncovered 2 weeks ago now lies reassembled on a linen cloth beside bottles of 1925 Cabernet. His hands, steady from decades of corking, surprised even him with how cleanly they fitted the pieces together. No tremble, no hesitation, just click, snap, slide. It's almost like riding a bicycle. If that bicycle once rattled in your hands in the trenches of Verdun, Lucien doesn't talk about the war. Most men in Saint-Emilion don't. Too many memories, too many ghosts in the soil. The Great War had taken many things, sons, limbs, hope. For Lucien, it took his voice. Not literally. He can speak, but he chooses not to, not unless necessary. So when the second visitor comes, 3 nights after the new moon, Lucien doesn't speak. He just opens the gate. The man is Spanish, thin. His coat is far too nice for someone traveling through farmland in the middle of the night, and the pistol on his hip is polished, but discreet. He calls himself Raphael. Lucien gestures toward the cellar door. Raphael doesn't flinch. Inside, under the flicker of an oil lamp, the two men stand in silence. Lucien points to the brandy crate. Raphael opens it, inspects the weapon, tests the weight. Then, from under his coat, he pulls a packet, papers sealed and stamped. Probably fake. Doesn't matter. What matters is that he also pulls out a list. Names, places, times, and underlined twice. La Frontière Sud, the southern border, smuggling into Spain, or out of it. It's not clear what Raphael wants, but what he's willing to pay is obvious. He places a pouch of silver coins on the table. Old currency, Spanish marks. But Lucien knows someone in Bordeaux who'll trade them quietly. Raphael says 3 words before he leaves. Mas en tres. More in 3. 3 nights? 3 weeks? Lucien doesn't ask. Just nods. That night, he doesn't sleep. Instead, he climbs the stone steps to the attic, opens the old cedar chest he hasn't touched in years, and pulls out his service pistol. It's still wrapped in a scrap of cloth from his wife's wedding dress. He unwraps it slowly, checks the chamber, and loads a single round. Just one. For himself? For Henri? For whatever comes next? Hard to say. Many people still think that Lucien had a silent agreement with himself, never to be caught helpless again. That his quiet life wasn't a retreat from guilt, but a strategy for control. And when you spend years with your fingers deep in wine barrels, gauging fermentation by scent alone, you learn to detect when something, anything, is starting to turn. And things are turning. On the surface, all seems fine. Lucien still sells to the cooperative. The neighbors still wave as he passes, but Madame Bordeaux across the lane notices he's stopped sending over leftover grapes for her jam. The postman sees crates marked Reserve, stacked where last year's rosé should be. And the village priest, the one who drinks a little too freely at Sunday lunch, mentions that Lucien's confessions have become shorter, sharper. None of them say anything out loud yet, but the gossip brews. Down in the cellar, Lucien's operations grow. He builds a false back into the wine rack, just behind the second row of vintage Bordeaux. Pull one bottle out halfway, twist, and a hidden latch releases. Behind it, hollowed stone, just wide enough for crates. 6 now, each marked only with a small red triangle. He doesn't ask what's in them anymore. He just counts them. By the 3rd week, Raphael returns. This time with another man, a broad-shouldered figure who doesn't remove his gloves or hat. Lucien offers no wine. The transaction is quick. The broad man lifts each crate with surprising gentleness, carries them to a waiting truck, unmarked, silent, and drives off into the pre-dawn mist. Lucien watches the taillights disappear down the gravel path. Then he walks back inside and pours himself a glass of wine. Not from the 1925 vintage, from the 1919, the one he keeps only for moments of crisis. As he sips, he looks at the wall opposite the cellar door. There's a picture hanging there, framed, slightly askew. It's the last photo taken of him and his wife. She's holding their newborn son, who did not live through the week. Lucien is smiling in the picture, but his eyes are already somewhere else, somewhere farther away. He hadn't looked at it in years, but tonight he studies it. Then, without ceremony, he turns it to face the wall. He doesn't sleep. Instead, he begins building shelves along the south wall. Not for wine, for parts. Metal casings, disassembled rifles, a mortar base plate. The smell of gun oil begins to compete with the scent of wine, and in the village above, the days grow warmer. The vines stretch toward the sun. Children play in the dirt roads, and tourists trickle through with sketchbooks and baguettes. It's the kind of town you'd photograph and forget, thinking it just a charming backdrop. But in 1929, Saint-Emilion isn't just background, it's logistics. And Lucien Moreau is no longer just a vintner. He's a node. Whether by choice or by blood, he has become part of something broader, something grinding slowly beneath the polite clink of wine glasses and Sunday bells. The revolution isn't loud here. It's methodical, patient, stored in oak and sealed in darkness, and it smells just faintly like gunpowder. In a village where change arrives slower than rain after prayer, the appearance of Henri Moreau, again, ripples like a rock dropped in a mill pond. He shows up late, as usual. A cold morning in early April. The fog still clings to the earth like a sheet that refuses to lift. Lucien hears the low chug of an unfamiliar motor just before dawn, and by the time he walks to the edge of the vineyard, boots dew wet, Henri is already there, standing in front of the old well, lighting a cigarette with fingers that shake slightly less than last time. "Miss me?" Henri grins, half charming, half feral. Lucien says nothing. He just gestures toward the house. Inside, Henri pours himself a coffee without asking. No sugar, no milk. Then he lays out the day's offering on the kitchen table. 2 more maps, a list of names in code, and something that catches Lucien's breath. An insignia patch from the French army, deliberately torn. "You remember Claude Rigal?" Henri asks. Lucien nods slowly. He does. Claude was one of their childhood friends, joined the police after the war. Last Lucien heard, he was working counterintelligence out of Toulouse. "He's onto us." Lucien doesn't flinch, but something in his jaw sets like cement. Henri continues, too casually. "He's got contacts in Bordeaux. Someone's been asking around about unusual shipments. You might want to rethink your delivery routes." Lucien simply picks up the patch, rolls it between 2 fingers, and tosses it into the kitchen stove. There's an unspoken rhythm between them, one forged not from affection, but habit. Henri talks. Lucien listens. And when it matters most, they both act like blood matters more than peace. That morning, they walk the vineyard perimeter together. To any passerby, they might look like 2 brothers discussing soil acidity or the late bloom. But they're mapping routes, talking choke points, assessing visibility from the north slope. They stop at the eastern trellis, the one with the crooked post. Lucien taps it. Hollow. Henri raises a brow. "You dug it out?" Lucien nods. Inside that post, a canister sealed with wax. Inside the canister, contact lists and 1 flare. Just in case, Henri lets out a low whistle. "You've been busy." Lucien shrugs. It's not pride, it's preparedness. Later, back in the cellar, Henri takes stock. His face, still boyish in the wrong light, grows serious as he runs his fingers along the shelf lined with parts. "You know," he says, "most cellars smell like mold. Yours smells like the Somme." Lucien lets that one sit, because the truth is, his brother's presence changes the air, not just literally, with the scent of tobacco and sweat, but existentially. Henri brings with him the world Lucien tried to bury. The soldier's world, the world of codes and causes, of certainty sharpened into weapons. He had once admired Henri for that. Now, it feels like a storm cloud with legs. Still, Lucien never denies him entry, and that too is a kind of loyalty. In the days that follow, Henri installs a second lock on the cellar door. Not on the outside, but inside, hidden beneath the 3rd stair. He rewires the electric lamp to flicker in a pattern, one that matches a code used by anarchist cells in Marseille. He teaches Lucien how to distinguish a real telegram from a decoy by the way it folds. They work in silence most days, And when dusk comes, Henri disappears again, into the hills, into alleys, into whatever holes men like him always seem to find. But the real complication arrives on a Wednesday. Lucien is bottling when the knock comes. A quick rap at the front door. Too confident to be a villager. Too early to be a delivery. He opens the door to find a woman, 30-ish. Black coat, gloves, hat too fine for the region. She smiles politely and introduces herself as Mademoiselle Fournier, an independent researcher studying the role of post-war viticulture in rural economics. Lucien tilts his head, doesn't speak. She takes that as an invitation. Inside, she asks questions. Not invasive, but precise. How long has he owned the vineyard? Does he export directly or via co-op? Has he noticed any changes in soil yield since 1925? She notes everything in a little leather book. Lucien answers and nods, shrugs, one-word replies. Eventually, she asks to see the cellar. Lucien declines, politely, firmly. She doesn't push, just scribbles something in her notebook and thanks him for his time. At the door, she pauses and says, "You have very clean boots for someone who works with soil." Lucien closes the door slowly, then locks it, twice. That night, he finds Henri already in the cellar, polishing a long rifle with meticulous care. She wasn't local, Lucien says. Henri's eyes narrow. Describe her. Lucien does. Henri doesn't blink once. She's not a researcher, he says. She's with Direction Générale. They've been sniffing around the border since the Catalan boys crossed the line last winter. If she's here, we've got a week. Maybe less. Lucien doesn't ask what he means. Instead, he moves to the shelf, lifts a bottle of 1924, and slides it back twice. The wall creaks. The latch disengages. And another doorway opens, deeper into the stone. A new hiding place, recently completed. Henri raises his glass. To the Vintner with the deepest cellars, they drink in silence. Many people still think that Henri was dragging Lucien deeper into a cause he didn't believe in. Others argue the opposite, that Lucien, quiet and methodical, was the true architect, and Henri merely the storm he let in for cover. The documents recovered later don't clarify much, but what's clear, even now, is that after Mademoiselle Fournier left, things began to escalate. Lucien expands the lower cellar, uses old Roman tunnels beneath the vineyard, builds air vents disguised as wine racks, and he begins using a stamp, VM for Vins Moreau, on select bottles that travel only via discreet cart to a man in Biarritz. In the village, the talk is mild, just little things. Lucien no longer attends Mass. He's seen speaking to the baker's son in the alley, and someone hears hammering late at night. But rural France in 1929 is not a place of confrontation. Not yet. The cellar door stays locked, always. Not just bolted from the inside now, but layered with misdirection. An old wine barrel set directly in front of it, aged labels curling just enough to look convincingly forgotten. To open the door, one must first roll the barrel aside, lift the floor mat, and press a small wooden peg that looks, at first glance, like part of the floor's natural grain. Lucien has always been meticulous, but lately his work borders on surgical. Above ground, the spring sunshine begins to bless the vineyard. The vines stretch in sleepy elegance, brushing green leaves into the breeze like dancers in slow motion. The villagers smile more. Weddings are planned. Young men polish their bicycles, and the mayor begins whispering that this year's grape will be one for the books. Lucien nods when asked, but inside, he knows the only books that matter now are encrypted, smuggled, and hidden behind barrels of wine no one will ever drink. Because beneath the soil, beneath the cellar, beneath even the false wine racks, something new has taken shape. A third level, unfinished, uneven, dug out with Lucien's bare hands, over countless sleepless nights. It's damp, cold, and it houses only two things, a cot and a locked chest. The cot is for emergencies. The chest is for decisions. One morning, while inspecting the barrels stacked near the western wall, Lucien notices something odd. The floor beneath one of the crates is damp, not with spilled wine, but with something darker. He kneels, lifts the crate carefully, and finds a slick stain of gun oil. It's spreading, which means the crate has been moved. Improperly. Roughly. He stares at it for a long moment, then stands, walks upstairs, and locks the outer cellar door again. That afternoon, Madame Bordeaux stops by. Again. The widow Bordeaux has lived across the lane since 1915. She's seen everything, or claims to. When Lucien first moved in, she offered him fresh bread and conversation. Over the years, her visits have dwindled, but her gaze has not. Her window always faces his vineyard, and her lace curtains move even when the wind is still. She's not here for bread today. She carries a small parcel, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. Lucien answers the door, wiping his hands on a towel. She smiles, but it's not warm. "I found this near the vineyard," she says simply, handing him the package. "Thought it might be yours." Lucien unties it carefully. Inside, a wine label. One of his. Except this one has a smear across the printed date, and the ink has bled slightly. Oil-based smudge. Faint outline of a boot heel. Someone dropped it. Lucien thanks her quietly. She does not leave immediately. Instead, she squints at him. "You work very late these days." Lucien says nothing. She steps closer, voice softer. "It's a good year for gossip, Lucien. The vines are listening." And then she's gone, the parcel lighter than air in his hand. Lucien closes the door, locks it, stares out the window. Someone's watching him, maybe more than one someone. That night, he tests every trap in the cellar, each latch, every pressure point. The hidden shelf still works. The rifle mounts haven't shifted, but the oil, someone's brushed against it. He doesn't tell Henry, not yet. Instead, he shifts crates, replaces real weapons with wooden replicas, painted, weighted, identical at a glance but useless. He moves the real ones to the third cellar and places the widow Bordeaux's parcel on top of the chest. A reminder. Days pass. Then a crate goes missing. It happens between a scheduled pickup and a second delivery. Somewhere in the 48 hours where Lucien is sure it was there, and now it isn't. No sign of forced entry, no broken locks. He stands in the cellar, staring at the empty space where it once sat, the floor beneath it free of dust, as if it simply vanished. Henri returns that evening, face flushed, breath tight. "They used it," he says, tossing his coat on a chair. "Grenoble. Border police reported it. No one claimed responsibility, but it was ours." Lucien pours a glass of wine, doesn't drink it. Henri goes on. "It was supposed to go to Montpellier. Someone rerouted it." Lucien finally speaks. "Inside job?" Henri doesn't answer, just pours his own glass. Or bad timing. But the look in his eyes betrays him. He doesn't believe that. Now they're both suspicious. Lucien takes to keeping a notebook, stored not in the cellar, but under a loose tile in the kitchen. In it, times, dates, who arrives, who speaks, who doesn't, who knocks twice, and who forgets. The tension climbs like the vines themselves, slow, steady, unavoidable. And then, just after midnight on the first Sunday of May, Lucien hears something he hasn't heard in months. Voices, outside. Not loud, not angry, just murmurs. 2 men, 1 woman. He kills the lights. From the attic window, he sees them, standing near the western vines, half hidden, One of them smokes. The match flares and dies. He watches. They don't move. They're not trespassing. Not yet. But they're not local. Lucien returns to the cellar and removes the pistol from its cloth wrap. It's still loaded. He doesn't use it, not tonight. But he sleeps with it beside the cot, in the damp new tunnel, beneath the barrels of carefully mislabeled Pinot Noir. Many people still think that moment. The missing crate, the strangers, the parcel from the widow, was when Lucien should have pulled out, burned the ledger, fled. But others argue he'd passed that point long ago, that he'd never had the option. So what do you think? When is a vintner no longer just a man who makes wine? When he lies? When he arms? Or when he starts listening to footsteps in the dark and smiling anyway? The rain arrives uninvited, lashing sideways against the vineyard like a punishment. It starts just after sunset and doesn't stop. For hours, it pelts the old roof tiles, drums against the cellar windows, and softens the soil until Lucien's boots sink with every step. It isn't the sort of rain you sleep through. It's the kind that rearranges plans. Lucien stands at the kitchen door, staring out into the muddy dark. He knows what this kind of weather means. Washed tracks, broken seals, and accidents waiting to happen. And it doesn't take long for one to find him. Near midnight, there's a knock. Not the practiced, polite tap of a neighbor or a courier. It's frantic. Wet knuckles against wet wood 3 times. Pause, then 4 more. Lucien opens the door just enough to see the shape on the porch. Henri, soaked, panting, and dragging a bundle under his arm wrapped in a burlap sack. Lucien doesn't ask, just steps aside. Inside, Henri collapses onto the kitchen bench, pulls the bundle free, and reveals a uniform. Not French, Spanish. And not just any uniform. It's from the Guardia Civil, the paramilitary police. And it's stained. Not wine, blood. Lucien exhales through his nose and pours Henri a towel. Then finally, did you kill him? Henri doesn't answer right away. Instead, he peels off his coat, rain soaked through to the seams, and lays it over the back of the chair. He was already shot, Henri mutters. I just made sure he wouldn't tell anyone what he saw. Lucien stares at the uniform on the floor. The insignia glistens. Bullet hole through the shoulder. You buried him? Lucien asks. Henri nods. South slope, under the fig tree. Lucien closes his eyes. The south slope is due for soil treatment next week. The cooperative sometimes sends students to observe. He'll need to adjust the schedule. The next morning, Lucien works as if nothing happened. Tends the vines, cleans the barrel tools, greets the postman with a nod. But in the cellar, a new kind of urgency brews. The rain has seeped into one of the lower tunnels. A crate, carelessly sealed, is now damp, and one of the rifles inside shows rust along the magazine housing. It's the first sign of decay. He dries the crate by lantern light, his fingers working faster than usual. Henri paces above, muttering half-sentences, talking about border crossings, sabotage trains, and someone named Tobias who's supposed to be dead, but isn't. Lucien tunes it out. Then, mid-morning, another discovery. Behind one of the older barrels, long thought empty, more decorative than functional, he finds a torn telegram envelope. No message inside, just the address panel. But it isn't addressed to him. It's addressed to Jean-Auguste Bordeaux, the widow's husband, the man buried back in 22, mourned by the entire village, declared a war casualty. Lucien turns the envelope over. There's no date. But the ink hasn't faded much. He slips it into his pocket and says nothing to Henri. That evening, Lucien walks into the village under the pretense of visiting the grocer. The roads are slick, the air still heavy with cloud-soaked silence. When he passes the widow's house, the curtain twitches, just barely. He walks on. At the grocer's, Madame Léger offers him dried lentils and conversation. He takes the lentils, politely declines the latter. But he listens, always listening. Someone broke into the town hall last week. Nothing stolen, except a few old records, and someone else, no one says who, asked about old military telegrams. Lucian's hands tighten around the paper bag. On the way back, he stops at the chapel, not to pray, to check the confessional. He isn't religious, but he knows the chapel's floorboards better than the priest does, and he's not surprised to find behind the left curtain a loose stone tile. He lifts it gently. Inside, another envelope. Same handwriting, no stamp. He leaves it untouched. Back at the vineyard, Henri is asleep on the cellar cot, snoring lightly, one hand resting on a pistol. Lucien tiptoes past and descends to the second level. There, he begins organizing crates into smaller shipments, breaking the stockpile into fragments that can move without notice. He uses old labels, new codes, barrels marked resin not for sale, bottles sealed with wax colors no one in the village would recognize. Many people still think that this moment of methodical repacking was the clearest sign Lucien wasn't just reacting to Henri's chaos, that he was preparing for something bigger, anticipating failure, planning contingencies. After all, you don't invent a 5-symbol wax code overnight. So what do you think? Was Lucien simply trying to contain the mess? Or had the Vintner become a strategist? Either way, by the time the rain finally stops, 3 days later, the vineyard is transformed. Above ground, peaceful, green, wine-rich. Below ground, crates reboxed, new maps drawn, old rifles cleaned and oiled. But one thing remains unresolved: the uniform. Henri wants to burn it. Lucien disagrees. Instead, he seals it inside a barrel, not with wine, but with brine. Submerged, weighted, hidden beneath a layer of salt and straw. Labeled, Export, Germany. It will leave with the next shipment to Strasbourg. Out of sight, out of France. Lucien doesn't say it aloud, but as he hammers the lid shut, his expression says everything. No evidence, no trace, no more surprises, but the widow still watches. And in the distance, under a reddening sky, a train whistle blows just a little too early. Barrels, bottles, and ballistics. Lucien's cellar now holds them all in a precarious harmony. To the casual eye, nothing's amiss. The rows of oak barrels still breathe in the cool, subterranean air. Spider webs cling lazily to corners. The faint smell of fermentation clings to the walls like a loyal ghost. But beneath the surface, there's tension in the air, tight, silent, and ready to snap like a cork under pressure. Lucien has always known the value of camouflage. His wine operation, modest as it may seem, has become the perfect front. Labels are printed with exaggerated years, often referencing non-existent vintages. Some are even faked entirely, invented estates from villages no longer on any map. A bottle might say, Pinot Noir, 1923, Chateau Beliveau. But inside, it holds a small revolver sealed in wax and tightly corked. The real weapons, though, travel in barrels. Lucien has grown increasingly inventive. He hollows them carefully, ensuring the weight distribution mimics full wine casks. A half-inch shell of cheap red wine sloshes around a solid pine core that hides pistols, maps, even hand grenades. The result? A barrel that bleeds wine if pierced, but resists suspicion long enough to cross a checkpoint. And it's working, at least for now. Deliveries pass through the Bordeaux station with few questions. His contacts, mostly anonymous drivers with false mustaches and even falser papers, carry crates marked reserve stock and export only to small communes along the Pyrenees. From there, smugglers, some Spanish, some French, all desperate, move the contents southward to who knows where. Rebels? Revolutionaries? Or something murkier? Lucien doesn't ask, and the money keeps arriving. But there are cracks in the barrel, literally. One morning, while inspecting a shipment meant for Narbonne, Lucien hears a faint clink when moving a barrel. Too faint, too dry. He pries it open. Inside, A bottle-shaped wooden dummy filled with sand, empty. No gun, no map, just wait in silence. At first he thinks it's a mistake. Then he finds a second, then a third. Someone's replacing real cargo with fakes. Lucien tightens his jaw. This isn't mere theft, it's sabotage. That evening, he calls Henri back to the vineyard. They meet in the deepest part of the cellar, beneath the hanging bulbs and above a floor freshly swept. Lucien points at the dummies. Henri frowns. They're not ours, he mutters. Lucien knows. If Henri were stealing from him, he'd be messier. Henri paces. It's inside the chain. Someone between us and Toulouse. Might be the guys in Biarritz, or farther south. I'll sniff it out. Lucien stops him with a gesture, then carefully hands him one of the dummies. Hidden inside, beneath a false base, is a slip of paper, a drawing of a rat, smiling, wearing a crown. Henri goes pale. Lucien doesn't ask, but his eyes say it. What does it mean? Henri answers quietly. There's a faction. Broke off last year. Started playing their own games. Double dealing. Cutting middlemen. They call themselves les rois souterrains. Underground kings. Lucien raises an eyebrow. Henri continues. It's a joke. A threat. If they're in our line now, we're not just moving guns anymore. We're laundering someone else's mess. Lucien says nothing, just moves to the barrel, reseals it, relabels it. This one won't be shipped. It will be buried, just like the man in the uniform. The next few days, Lucien reorganizes everything. Shipments are delayed under the excuse of a bad corking batch. The cooperative receives fewer bottles. Villagers grumble that his rosé tastes off. No one says anything to his face, except the widow Bordeaux. She corners him outside the church. Sunlight flickers between clouds. Her hands clutch her rosary, but her eyes are sharp. You've stopped singing, she says. Lucien looks at her, not coldly, just quiet. You used to hum when you worked, she adds. Your wife said you sang to the vines. Lucien doesn't answer. His silence is an answer in itself. She leans in slightly. Be careful with the men who wear crowns, Lucien. The ground remembers blood, even if the rain washes it away. He watches her walk off, rosary swinging. That night, he dreams of crowns made of bullets. Wakes up sweating. To calm himself, he descends into the cellar and opens a bottle. An actual bottle of actual wine, untouched by contraband or symbols. He sits in the darkness and drinks half a glass. Then he retrieves his ledger, the one only he knows about. Inside, every shipment, every contact, every deviation. He marks 3 names, crosses one out. He also draws something in the corner of the page, a rat with a crown and a dagger through its neck. Many people still argue about Lucien's intent during this time. Some say he was trying to reclaim control. Others believe he was already planning to burn it all down, to bury the operation and the players with it. A few even think he planned to pit both factions against each other while he slipped away. But here's the thing. No one asked what it costs a man to turn a bottle of Bordeaux into a burial shroud. So what do you think? Is a cellar still a refuge once it stores more guns than grapes? Or does it become something else? Something colder, louder, waiting for the right match to drop? The Spanish visitor arrives unannounced, as they always do. It's a Wednesday afternoon, mid-May. The heat settles early over the vines, and Lucien is upstairs scrubbing wine stains from his fingernails when he hears the Citroën roll onto the gravel. He's expecting no one. From the window, he watches as a man steps out. A stranger. Tall, lean, dressed not in a smuggler's haste, but in something far more polished. A tan linen suit with a red kerchief tucked into the breast pocket. He walks like a man who doesn't care if he's being watched. Lucien doesn't go out to meet him. He lets the stranger knock, once, then twice. Then, after a beat, the man simply opens the door and steps inside. Lucien turns from the sink. The man nods, casual. "You're not what I expected," the stranger says in Spanish-tinged French. Lucien dries his hands slowly. "That depends on what you expected." The man smiles. "A cellar rat, not a vintner." He introduces himself as Señor Navarro, but Lucien knows that's not his name. Men like this never use their real ones. Navarro smells of bay rum and cigarettes, and when he walks, the wood floor seems to adjust itself under his feet. He doesn't wait to be invited, just walks into the kitchen, places a map on the table, and pulls a coin from his pocket. "It's changing," he says. "The tide. We're not just feeding the revolution now, we're arming the exiles." Lucien raises a brow. Navarro flips the coin. Silver, not French, with a lion etched into the back, and lands it neatly on a point along the Pyrenees. New routes. Faster, but riskier. Lucien studies the map. The point Navarro indicates is dangerously close to military patrol zones. He shakes his head. Navarro shrugs. "It's a favor to Madrid. A message must be delivered." Lucien's silence hangs like humidity. Then he steps back and gestures toward the cellar door. Navarro grins. At last, the famous cave. Downstairs, Navarro examines the barrels without touching them. He circles the room once, nodding at the faint scent of gun oil. "You're organized," he says. "I like organized." Then he points at one particular barrel in the corner, an older one, patched with steel bands. "This one. It goes first." Lucien lifts the lid. Inside, instead of a standard rifle bundle, lies a rolled parchment, wax sealed and bound with cord. It's not his work. He glances at Navarro. "A message," Navarro says. "Encrypted. For our people in Zaragoza." Lucien frowns. "It's not what I move." "It is now." He leaves shortly after that, but not before sipping a glass of wine and offering one final remark. "You have a reputation, Monsieur Moreau. Quiet. Loyal. But loyal men die quickest these days." Then he steps into the Citroën, kicks up dust, and disappears back into the hills. Lucien watches him go, glass still in hand. He drains it slowly. That night, Lucien brings Henri down to the second cellar. They say nothing at first, just stand over the opened barrel, staring at the parchment. Finally, Henri sighs. "Do you know what's in it?" Lucien shakes his head. "Good," Henri says. "Let's keep it that way." But Lucien does something unexpected. He removes the parchment. Slowly, carefully, weighs it in his hand. Then he tucks it into a sealed wine bottle, drains one, dries it, slides the scroll inside, corks it, and seals the top with dark wax. A real vintage label goes over the neck. Saint-Emilion, 1927. Henri watches him. "You're getting paranoid." Lucien's voice is calm. "I'm getting careful. They don't send the barrel. Instead, they substitute it with another, filled with legitimate wine, but marked for the same drop point. Inside that bottle, the message now rides beneath layers of tannin and glass. Many people still argue about that decision, whether it saved lives or sealed fates. After all, the message never reached Zaragoza, and days later, a safe house on the Spanish border was raided. 4 men were arrested. 1 disappeared entirely. Some say Navarro knew. Others think Lucien quietly intercepted something meant to spark more than just war. But what do you think? Would you deliver a message if you didn't know who it would burn? 2 days later, the widow Bordeaux visits again. This time, she doesn't bother with parcels or pleasantries. She stands in Lucien's vineyard at dusk, hands folded behind her back, and waits until he notices her. When he approaches, she speaks softly. "A man came asking about your wife." Lucien stiffens. She nods. "Said he was writing a book. Something about women who died young during the influenza." Lucian's wife, Isabel, didn't die of influenza. At least that's what the town believes. The widow tilts her head. He was lying, of course. You can always tell. Lucien doesn't answer. He simply looks down at the soil. The vines are curling, wrapping around the stakes like they always do. But they seem heavier now, as if even they are listening. The widow's voice softens further. People don't come looking for ghosts unless they plan to wake them. And then she walks away, shawl wrapped tight, rosary still clicking softly at her side. That night, Lucien opens an old chest in the attic. Inside, beneath a folded suit and faded letters, he finds a photograph. Himself, Isabel, and a man standing just behind them, half smiling, hat tilted. The man's name was Julien Fournier. Mademoiselle Fournier, the so-called researcher, had his nose. The photo trembles slightly in Lucien's hands, not from emotion, from realization. The message wasn't meant for Zaragoza. It was meant to test him. Someone's pulling at threads buried in his past, not just his cellar. And the vines? They're not the only things being cultivated here. Sunday Mass in Saint-Emilion is a ritual wrapped in wine and linen. The church bells ring precisely at 8. The pews fill slowly, the scent of wax and lavender lingering in the air. Elderly men nod off during the sermon. Children fidget with their collars. And Lucien Moreau, vintner by trade and smuggler by necessity, sits near the back, always near the back, with his cap low and his boots clean. He has not missed a Sunday in 6 years, until today, because today the cellar is a cathedral of its own. Downstairs, under the weight of a century-old vineyard, Lucien is orchestrating a different kind of sacrament, the handoff. The operation is simple. On paper, 1 marked crate, 1 carrier. A precise delivery time, just before noon, when the narrow vineyard road is typically deserted. The crate is labeled for blessing, Abbé du Moutier, a local monastery known for its deep cellars and deeper silences. But inside, a long-range rifle, broken into pieces and wrapped in cheesecloth that smells faintly of gunpowder and lavender oil. Henri is pacing near the tunnel entrance. He's been up all night, nervously recounting Navarro's visit and mumbling about radio frequencies that don't match the standard rebel encryptions. "This isn't right," he mutters. "This drop, it's too easy, too open." Lucien finishes sealing the crate. He hands Henri the manifest, faked of course, and adjusts the crate's label for smudging. The ink has to look like it's sweated off under transport conditions. "You don't even know who's picking it up," Henri hisses. Lucien pauses, then replies flatly, "Neither do they." Henri freezes. That line, ambiguous, deliberate, feels like a stone dropped in a well. Lucien lifts the crate himself, places it onto the small 2-wheel cart. It creaks just enough to be believable. Too smooth, and it looks staged. Too rough, and it draws attention. Timing matters. At 11:37 a.m., just as the congregation begins to stand for communion, Lucien walks down the alley behind the chapel, pushing the cart with slow, methodical steps. Not fast enough to seem in a hurry, not slow enough to seem aimless. He leaves the cart beside the old olive press. A man in a priest's robe, young, clean-shaven, too athletic for monastic life, approaches with a basket of hymnals. They don't speak. The man nods once. Then, with impressive precision, he picks up the crate, lifts it onto his shoulder, and disappears into the back entrance of the church. Lucien watches him go, then walks home. Later that evening, the church hosts its spring choir recital. The villagers gather again. Henri doesn't attend, of course. He stays in the cellar, writing notes in a code book that no longer fits into any known cipher. He mutters under his breath about les rois souterrains, about sabotage, about how Navarro's route changes make no strategic sense. Lucien says little, but he listens. He's always listening. At midnight, Lucian receives a visitor. Not Navarro, not the faux priest. It's a child, 12, maybe 13, thin, fast, frightened. The boy knocks once, slips a small envelope into Lucian's hand, and vanishes into the vineyard without a word. Inside the envelope, a single scrap of parchment, a hand-drawn sigil of a candle inside a barrel. Below it, a phrase, Le sang dort sous les cierges. Blood sleeps beneath the candles. Lucian rereads it 3 times. It's not a threat, not directly. It's a reference, an old one. During the Franco-Prussian War, rebel couriers used that exact phrase to warn of weapon caches hidden inside church candle vaults. But that code had been retired for decades. Someone's reviving it. Henri, now hovering near Lucian's elbow, snatches the paper and frowns. "Who gave you this?" Lucian simply says, too young to remember the war, too smart to be playing games. They both understand the implication. Someone's recruiting children now, which means desperation, or ambition, possibly both. The next day, Lucian walks into the village library. It's rarely visited. Dust lies thick on the history shelves. He finds the old military map of Saint-Emilion and its underground catacombs, some dating back to the Roman Empire. Places that haven't seen light in centuries. Lucian studies the map, fingers the faded edges. There's a passage, one that runs from under the chapel, beneath the vineyard slope, toward the old abbey cellars, the same abbey marked on the crate. He traces the route with his finger, then draws a small X at the junction beneath his own land. Not because he plans to collapse it, not yet, but it helps to know where to put the dynamite if things turn ugly. That evening, Lucian changes his delivery routes. Instead of using the regular drivers, he hand-selects locals. Quiet, reliable, old enough to distrust politics, but young enough to keep up with a schedule. He pays them well. Not in gold, in goods. Cigarettes, bread, soap. Things worth more than currency now. He leaves subtle signs in the village. A wine bottle left on a doorstep, neck tilted to the left. A broken cork tied with black string. An empty grape basket turned upside down outside the bakery. Each a signal, each read by someone who knows what to do. By nightfall, the village is quiet again. But beneath it, men are moving. Carefully, silently, carrying crates labeled Vintage 1928 that don't contain a single drop of wine. Many people still argue about this point in Lucian's story. Some say this was when he took control, not just of his operation, but of the entire regional line. Others insist he was being herded, pushed into position by smarter wolves in darker woods. But think about it. How many winemakers do you know who can map a church's escape tunnel by memory? And who delivers rifles during communion? So what do you think? Was Lucian a pawn or a bishop? The smuggler's map lies open across the cellar table, weighed down by a bottle of vinegar and a revolver with the safety still on. Lucien doesn't look at either. His eyes are fixed on a thin red line inked across the hills south of Saint-Emilion, a trail so old it doesn't appear on modern maps. Locals call it La Fileuse, the spinner's path. Once used by wool merchants, now reclaimed by rabbits, roots, and men with things to hide. Henri leans over his shoulder. It's a bad route. Lucian doesn't disagree. It's the quietest, and right now, quiet is everything. The usual path along the main road has grown suspicious. Too many random gendarme stops. Too many routine checks at the co-op. Even the grocer mentioned the new officer in town. Young, eager, too curious for a man who claims to dislike wine. Lucian has 3 shipments to move by Sunday. The crates are already sealed. Rifles, ammunition. A smaller box with documents Henri won't explain. That one gets its own driver, and not one of the usuals. Lucian chooses Marcel, a mute farmhand with strong legs, a dependable bicycle, and no political leanings whatsoever. He loads Marcel's bike himself, wrapping the cargo in burlap and straw. Gives him a nod. No words exchanged. It's better that way. Marcel disappears into the dawn, pedaling toward La Fileuse. Later that morning, Lucien walks the vineyard rows, not to tend the vines, but to think. Every step between the posts is measured. Every pause near a trellis is deliberate. He knows where the soil is softest, where old Roman wells sleep beneath the grass, where barrels might one day need to be buried. And as he walks, he considers something dangerous. Expansion, not of the vineyard, of the operation. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He was meant to be a caretaker, a favor to Henri, a quiet mule for rebels passing through. But the network has thickened. Names are whispered with reverence now. Not Navarro, not Henri, Lucien. He doesn't want that. But power, like wine, doesn't ask permission before it ferments. That night, Henri returns from Bordeaux with news. "You were right," he says, slamming a wet envelope onto the table. "The gendarme, Jacques, he's been watching you. Followed the last shipment to Libourne. Didn't stop it, but he's asking questions." Lucien opens the envelope. Inside, a sketch. Crude, but unmistakable. It's a drawing of him. At market, near the loading dock, Henri paces. "We can't keep sending crates the same way. We need a new path, a decoy." Lucien nods slowly, then looks at the map again. Traces a second route, one barely visible. Le Sentier des Moines. Forgotten. Dangerous. Steep enough to break a horse's leg. Perfect. They'll move the real shipment that way. But to pull it off, they need help. Lucien makes a rare decision. He leaves the vineyard. He walks into the village. Not as a vintner, but as a recruiter. His first stop is the blacksmith, Emile. A quiet man, widowed, loyal to no one. Lucien brings a bottle of his best red, offers it without a word. Emile understands. Then the school teacher's brother, Mathieu, lost his job for lending books with unwholesome philosophies, currently tending bees, also discreetly familiar with explosives. Lastly, the gravedigger, Pascal. He's seen everything. Buried things no priest would bless. Keeps secrets better than any ledger. By nightfall, the network grows by 3. None of them speak politics. None of them ask for coin. Lucien pays them in wine. Real wine. From the 1923 harvest. The one before his wife died. It's the only vintage he still respects. 2 nights later, the first run along Le Sentier des Moines begins. It's foggy, cold, the perfect weather for smuggling. Mathieu and Emile carry the crates, dressed as traveling monks. Lucien walks ahead with a lantern and a dog-eared Bible. The disguise is crude, but convincing in poor light. They pass 2 riders on patrol. Neither stops them. One even nods respectfully. Henri watches from the ridge, rifle slung under his coat. By dawn, the crates are gone. Delivered. No noise, no blood, no surprises. Lucien returns to the vineyard and finally allows himself a full night's sleep. It's the last good sleep he'll get for weeks. The next morning, the widow Bordeaux is waiting at the gate. She's holding a letter. Lucien eyes it wary. "It came for your brother," she says. "But I read it. He won't mind." Lucien sighs. She hands it over anyway. It's in Spanish. Lucien doesn't need Henri to translate. The words Navarro, traitor, and deadline speak for themselves. Henri is being hunted by his own people, and by sundown he's gone again. Vanished into the hills without explanation. Lucien doesn't chase him. Instead, he walks to the 3rd cellar, the one no one else knows about. He opens the chest, takes out the oldest revolver, checks the chamber, loads a single round. Just one. Same ritual, same thought. Not for protection, but for insurance. Many people still debate Le Sentier des Moines. Was it a triumph of ingenuity, or the start of Lucien's unraveling? The route worked, for a while, but each success invited more demand, and with every crate moved, Lucien's face became a liability. His silence became suspicious. His wine, too rich for a man who barely sold anymore. So what do you think? Is the man still in control if the map keeps growing without him? Or is he just following the trail, like everyone else, with a lantern and no idea what's on the other side? The fire begins as a flicker behind the north vineyard, just a lick of orange under a low-hanging moon. At first, Lucien mistakes it for a lantern. Perhaps Henri, returning from wherever he's been, creeping through the rows with yet another half-baked mission in tow. But the flicker grows. By the time Lucien reaches the ridge, breath sharp in his throat, the flames are dancing along the base of the trellis line. The leaves snap and curl like paper. Smoke climbs in thick columns, black against a violet sky. It smells like oak, like rot, like sabotage. This is not an accident. He doesn't call for help, doesn't even reach for a pail. He watches, not because he's careless, but because he's calculating. The fire is too clean. It skirts around the heart of the vineyard. It burns just enough to alarm, not enough to destroy. A message, not a massacre. Someone lit it for cover. By the time he returns to the house, he finds confirmation. The cellar hatch, ajar, not wide open, just not quite shut. Lucien's hand hovers over the latch. He listens. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, not even rats. He descends slowly. At the bottom, one thing is immediately clear. A crate is missing. Not one of the replicas. Not decoy stock. A real crate. Ammunition and a long-range Enfield rifle, meant for delivery near Limoges next week. Gone. Lucien moves quickly now. He checks the storage wall, the wine rack door. The backup cache in the hollowed barrel marked 1926 Grenache. All intact, which means the thief was precise. And that means they knew. Only a handful of people could have pulled that off. Henri, Navarro, or someone Lucien trained himself. He steps back, breath slow. The smoke is creeping into the house now. Faint tendrils reaching under doors and through floorboards. He opens a cellar vent, lets it pull the air in, and watches the draft carry the scent deeper underground. It's as if the vineyard is breathing in its own treachery. In the village, news of the fire spreads fast. Lucien plays the concerned farmer role with mechanical ease. He even summons the fire brigade, hours late, but loud enough to assure the neighbors. By noon, the mayor himself visits, offers condolences, a cigar, and a thinly veiled question. "Think it was lightning?" Lucien smiles. "I didn't see any clouds." The mayor chuckles nervously. Strange times. Strange indeed. Madame Bordeaux brings a pie, blueberry. He doesn't eat it. Instead, he leaves it on the cellar steps. Bait, maybe. Or an offering to a house no longer his. That evening, Lucien receives word. Not by courier, not by child, but by wine bottle, left on his doorstep. No note. Just corked with black wax. Unusual. Heavy. Inside, not wine, but a rolled slip of linen with one word burned into the fabric. Marseille, Henri's handwriting. Lucien studies it for a long time. If Henri's in Marseille, it means he's either in hiding or recruiting. Neither bodes well. And either way, the fire wasn't random. It was a distraction, part of a larger plan. But whose? By midnight, Lucien sets the vineyard on lockdown. He wires the cellar latch with a trip flare, installs a second lock on the attic, sets a bottle of salt water in the window, an old signal to anyone watching that the vineyard is quiet, which, in code, means not safe for approach, and still he doesn't sleep. Instead, he writes a letter, short, blunt, folded and sealed without signature. The house has been entered. One gone, one stays, one waits in the dark. Choose quickly. He places the letter into a bottle, marks it with a broken cork, and leaves it by the village fountain. just before sunrise. Someone will find it. Someone always does. The next morning, Lucien walks the property, where the fire touched. The vines are scorched, but salvageable. No roots destroyed. No structures burned. Just the illusion of disaster. He's impressed, infuriated, but impressed. It takes discipline to burn just enough, and that narrows the list of suspects. He rechecks the crates. Only one gone, but one of the empty barrels has been moved, just slightly, a centimeter to the left. Inside, Lucien finds a strip of cloth, torn from a priest's robe. Tied to it, a coin, Navarro's lion. So now he knows. The thief wasn't just anyone. It was someone working both sides. Navarro's faction, Les Rois Souterrains, had made their play. He brings the cloth and coin to the widow Bordeaux. It's the first time he's crossed her threshold in 6 years. She says nothing, just studies the items, her eyes sharp as frost. Then she turns to her mantle and opens a small wooden box. Inside, letters, dozens, all unsigned, all folded the same way, each marked with a tiny sketch of a lion. She hands him one. The paper smells like wine and blood. They've been here longer than you think, she whispers. Navarro didn't build this. He inherited it. You're not in his game, Lucien. He stares at the letter. Whose game, then? She shrugs. The one you forgot you started. That night, Lucien descends into the third cellar. He opens the old crate, the one marked Eau non potable, and pulls out the chest. Inside, dynamite, real, dry, stable. He removes 3 sticks, wraps them in wax cloth, tucks them behind the barrels closest to the escape tunnel. He's not bluffing anymore. If anyone enters uninvited again, they won't leave with a crate. They won't leave at all. Many still argue over this moment. The fire, the missing crate, the lion coin. Some claim Navarro was trying to provoke Lucien into action. Others believe it was Henri, playing both ends. A few think it was all a bluff. No one stole anything. The missing crate was a test. But look closely at what Lucien did next. He wired explosives in a wine cellar. He left a warning at a fountain. He took back control. Not with silence, but with the promise of noise. So what do you think? How many barrels does it take before a vineyard stops being a vineyard and becomes a front line? Lucien has always believed that silence was a shield. But now, as the gendarme lingers longer at the co-op gates, as strangers walk the vineyards with too much interest in their eyes, and as the widow's curtain twitches at stranger hours, he begins to realize silence has also made him visible. Too quiet, and you become a silhouette people squint at. So, when the gendarme arrives unannounced, Lucien knows better than to act surprised. His name is Caporal Duval. Young, clean-shaven, the kind of man who still polishes his buttons daily and stands straighter than necessary. He arrives at dusk, boots clean despite the muddy road, clipboard in hand. Routine inspection, he says. We've had reports of black market wine crossing the Pyrenees. Thought we'd get ahead of things. Lucien nods once, offers him a glass of Bordeaux. Duval declines, while on duty. Of course, they begin the tour. Lucien walks him through the vineyard first. Slopes trimmed, vines healthy, no crates in sight. He talks, briefly, about frost damage, sulfur treatments, and the poor yield in 26. Duval listens politely, writing nothing. Then they descend to the cellar. Lucien keeps the lights low. Enough to show good faith, not enough to show detail. Duval glances at barrels, taps a few with his knuckles, opens a lid at random, one filled with actual wine. Lucien even pulls a bottle of real 1924 and offers it. For your father, if he drinks. Duval raises an eyebrow. You don't ask who the wine is for? Lucien meets his eyes. I sell. They drink. What they do in between is none of my business. Duval smiles, not kindly. He makes one final note on the clipboard and nods. You keep tidy records, but someone's not happy with you. Lucien says nothing. Waits. Duval lowers his voice. We intercepted a crate in Marseille. Old wine, unusual wax. Contents were missing, but the bottles were traced. You've moved wine to places no one drinks. Lucien shrugs. I don't ask questions. Maybe you should start. And then he leaves. Just like that. No warrant, no accusations. Just a stone tossed into a still pond. After the visit, Lucien checks the cellar immediately. All seems intact, except one thing. The lantern has been moved, just slightly, not where he left it. A foot to the right, turned outward. Someone was signaling. Lucien walks upstairs into the kitchen and pours himself a glass of water, then pours it out. He knows now. Duval wasn't alone. Someone entered while Lucien was distracted with the tour. Briefly, carefully, just long enough to scan the cellar or leave something behind. He descends again, this time with gloves, inspects the barrels, the crates, the shelf behind the wine rack, and finds it. A small, thin, black ribbon tied to the underside of the false wall, barely visible. Crisp, clean, Navarro's mark. Not the lion this time, just the ribbon, a message. We see you. Lucien doesn't remove it. He burns it, then goes to the third cellar and begins shifting crates. That night, he sends a coded message to Henri. 3 corks, 1 long, 2 short. Delivered via Marcel, who now rides only at night and carries no name but a blank coin around his neck. The message is simple. They've come inside, we are watched. Barrel 7 must move. Barrel 7 contains more than guns. It holds the blueprints. Every route, every contact, every marked tunnel between Saint-Emilion and Carcassonne. If that falls into the wrong hands, no vineyard priest or plowboy is safe. Lucien doesn't trust anyone else to move it, so he prepares the cart himself. The next morning, Lucien wheels Barrel 7 out under fog and false dawn. He passes the chapel, the baker, Madame Léger's window. No one stops him. The destination, an abandoned wine press near the edge of the vineyard, long defunct, overgrown with weeds. Beneath it, a hatch, built by Lucien's grandfather during the war, forgotten by most, remembered by him. Inside, dry stone, quiet air, a hiding place not used in 20 years. He lowers the barrel in, reseals the trap door, scatters ash over the press to disguise his footprints, then walks back, whistling softly. But something is waiting at home. A letter, unmarked, laid across his doorstep like a sleeping animal. He opens it with a knife. Inside, 1 shipment didn't arrive, 1 crate was empty, 1 lie more, and we uncork the truth. No signature, just a black wine stain across the bottom. Still damp. Lucien reads it 3 times, then crumples it. The threat isn't from Navarro, not directly. This is someone within. Someone close. Someone using Navarro's language, but with personal venom. Henri? Possible, but unlikely. The widow? Unthinkable. Someone Lucien trusted enough to let inside, or to train. Perhaps one of the quiet couriers, or Emile, or even Marcel. He doesn't sleep that night. Instead, he draws up new routes, reroutes half the crates to Bayonne, burns the labels for the Toulouse run, marks 2 barrels with crushed glass in the lining, silent traps should anyone try to pry them. And in the third cellar, he installs something new, a pressure plate, connected to a tripwire, connected to barrel 9. No one will steal that one, not twice. Many historians still puzzle over Caporal Duval's visit. Was he truly investigating, or warning, or a pawn himself? The official report filed years later lists the visit as routine inspection, no anomalies. But the timing, within hours of a missing crate, a surveillance mark, and an unsigned threat, suggests something deeper. Some claim Duval was on Navarro's payroll. Others believe he was part of a separate faction altogether. A few think he simply recognized Lucien as something rare, a silent man whose silence made too much noise. So what do you think? Can a man remain invisible when his cellar has become a map room of war? Or is the very act of staying quiet the loudest move on the board? Lucien's hands are stained, faintly but permanently, not with blood. Not quite. but with tannin, oil, and the residue of choices that don't wash off with soap or prayer. He's sorting bottles late one night, legitimate vintage for once, when he hears it. A sound no vintner should hear in their own cellar. Breathing, not his, shallow, slow, coming from behind the far wall. He doesn't hesitate. Sets the bottle down gently, retrieves the pistol tucked into the hollow beneath the corking table, and moves silently. No creaks, no rush. Every floorboard here is familiar. He knows where to step and where not to. He draws close to the wine rack and listens. The breathing is gone, but something else lingers. A scent, familiar, sour, sharp, not wine, gunmetal, sweat, boot oil. Someone's been inside. Recently, he slides the third bottle on the top shelf. The rack clicks back, reveals the false wall. Nothing inside. Almost. A matchstick, burned halfway. Lucien holds it up. Its blackened tip tells him enough. Whoever was here had light and left in a hurry. He's not paranoid now. He's certain. The vineyard is compromised. He tightens the net. Every barrel is inventoried again. Triggers rechecked. Wax seals inspected under flame. Even the widow's pie, left untouched on the step for 3 days, is tested for chemical traces before it's buried beneath the old sycamore. That night, Lucien climbs the narrow stairs to the attic and retrieves an item he hasn't touched in years. A field radio, tuned to a rebel frequency once used along the southern border. It crackles like dry leaves, then goes silent. He listens for hours. At 3:12 a.m. it buzzes. One word comes through, distorted by static. Rats. That's all? But it's enough. The next day, a letter arrives. Not by courier, not even by child. It's tucked into the pocket of Lucien's coat, which he left on a hook outside the shed. The note is thin, almost translucent, folded 4 times and sealed with sugar wax. Inside, the next move comes from inside. One of yours is theirs. Marseille is gone. Time to burn the harvest. Lucien reads it twice, then burns it over the sink. The meaning is clear. Henri's gone silent in Marseille. The rebels are scattered. The Rois souterrains are no longer just shadowing. They're infiltrating. And someone Lucien trusts is no longer on his side. He stares at the vineyard. The vines wave gently in the wind, oblivious, beautiful, and vulnerable. That afternoon, Lucien calls a meeting, a rare one. Only 4 men are summoned. Emile the blacksmith, Pascal the gravedigger, Mathieu the schoolteacher's brother, and Marcel, the mute courier. They sit around the cellar table, surrounded by barrels, oil lamps, and silence. Lucien doesn't waste time. Someone's been inside, he says flatly. We were watched, crates touched, 1 message intercepted, 1 shipment exposed. He places a single coin on the table. Navarro's lion. No one speaks. Then Pascal clears his throat. I don't like politics, Lucien, but I like surprises even less. Lucien nods. That's why you're here. He lays out a plan. 3 false shipments. 1 to Biarritz, 1 to Lyon, 1 to nowhere. Just an empty cart with a cork-stamped ledger and false driver. Each shipment will carry a variation of the same decoy. Wood, straw, and a single piece of paper marked with fake coordinates. He watches their faces. Emile's expression doesn't change. Mathieu frowns. Pascal nods. But Marcel blinks. Just once. Too fast. Lucien sees it. He waits. Finishes the meeting. Assigns each man a route. But that night, as the decoys are being prepared, Lucien follows Marcel. Marcel doesn't go to the stable. He heads into the chapel. By the side door, he's not praying. He opens the vestry cabinet, removes a panel, and extracts a small envelope. Slips it into his coat. No hesitation. Lucien steps from the shadows. Marcel freezes. The envelope clutched tightly. Lucien says nothing. Marcel slowly opens his hand. offers the envelope forward. Lucien takes it. Inside, a map of the vineyard, with 3 barrels circled. Barrels only Marcel and Lucien had touched. Lucien looks into the man's eyes. Marcel doesn't cry, doesn't beg, just lowers his head. Lucien nods once. No words are exchanged. Marcel doesn't return to the vineyard. Back in the cellar, Lucien opens the 3rd barrel circled on the map. Inside, a list. Not from Marcel, from someone else. Dozens of names, places, contacts, people Navarro's group is watching, or targeting, or replacing. Lucien finds 3 names he knows. One he grew up with, one he fought beside, and one his own, underscored. Next to it, asset or eliminate, TBA. Lucien doesn't drink that night. He walks the rows of vines just before midnight, matches in one hand, ledger in the other. He doesn't burn the vineyard, not yet, but he burns the ledger, page by page, slowly, as the ashes drift up into the moonlight. He realizes something simple and terrifying. He is no longer a courier. He is no longer even a vintner. He is the target and the strategy, and he has only one advantage left. No one knows what he'll do next. Not Navarro, not the widow, not even Henri, if he's still alive. Many people still argue over the night Lucien burned his ledger. Some say it was desperation. Others believe it was his final rebirth, as something more than just a player on the board. A few suggest that the names in the barrel were planted to provoke him. That Marcel was a pawn, not a traitor. So what do you think? If the cellar is no longer safe, does the vintner become the fire, or the fuse? Dawn rises like steam over the vineyard, curling up through the soft mist, golden and slow. But Lucien doesn't watch the sun this morning. He watches the road. There's a moment, just after the rooster crows, but before the carts begin to roll, when the world is neither night nor day. That's when the ghosts move. And Lucien's vineyard, these days, has more ghosts than grapes. At 5:47 a.m., a cart approaches. 2 wheels, unmarked. Driven by a woman with a green scarf wrapped tight around her throat. Lucien expected her, didn't invite her. She stops outside the front gate and waits. Lucien doesn't move. 5 minutes pass. Then she steps down, walks to the cellar door, and leaves something behind. A bottle of wine with no label, sealed in white wax. Lucien lets her go, then retrieves the bottle, carries it inside like a dead bird, and sets it on the cellar table. He doesn't uncork it. He doesn't have to. White wax means one thing, a summons. Not from Navarro, not from Henri, from something older. La voix perdue, the lost voice. A faction so quiet, so cautious, most believed it had vanished after the war. But Lucien knew better. They never vanished. They just burrowed deeper, and now they want to speak. He waits 3 days before responding, just long enough to let them sweat. Then, on the 4th night, he makes his way to the abandoned dovecote outside Saint-Emilion. Half buried in ivy and silence, he brings no gun, no crates, only a single bottle of wine marked 1925 and a knife tucked into his boot. Inside the dovecote, darkness, until a candle flares. She's waiting, not the woman from the cart. Someone older, wiser, wrapped in layers of gray linen. She doesn't give a name, but Lucien remembers her from years ago. Just once, at a funeral for a man who was never officially buried. She gestures toward the bottle. He sets it down. Then she speaks. Navarro's lost control. Lucien doesn't flinch. He promised weapons. He delivered noise. Your name is no longer safe. Lucien raises a brow. Was it ever? She ignores the sarcasm. The king of the underground wants a war, she says. But you were never meant for that. Lucien says nothing, just waits. Then she hands him a file. Inside, photos. Black and white, poorly lit, but clear. One shows Navarro shaking hands with a man in a French military uniform. Another shows Henri, alive, in Marseille, meeting with 2 figures whose faces are scratched out. The final image, Lucien's vineyard. From above, aerial surveillance. I don't know who took them, she whispers. but someone paid dearly to know where you sleep. Lucian closes the file. What do you want? Silence, she says. The kind that costs everything. Back at the vineyard, Lucien seals the cellar with a new lock, one no one knows about. Then he empties barrel 6, the one labeled Rosé for export, and fills it instead with ashes from the ledger, from his old records, from the photographs. Barrel 6 is now a tomb. He nails it shut. That same night, Emile the blacksmith returns with word from Bayonne. The route's closed, he says. Bridge burned, blamed on a rebel cell. Everyone's watching the roads now. Lucien doesn't look up, just marks a large red X on the corner of his map. Then, without a word, he pulls out a smaller map, hand-drawn, frayed, one that doesn't rely on bridges. The canal paths, forgotten, narrow and slow. Perfect, Emile frowns. That'll take days. Lucien shrugs. Slow wine still gets poured. On the third night, Pascal the gravedigger arrives, not with news, with a body, a young man, no name, shot once in the back, tattooed on his collarbone, a rat wearing a crown. Pascal lays him on the table in the third cellar. Lucien studies the boy's face. He doesn't recognize him, but he recognizes the jacket, one of Marcel's backups. A courier, trusted. Pascal speaks softly. Found him on the chapel steps. Lucien nods once. Leave him. He's not being cold. He's giving the boy silence. The only thing Lucien has left to give. By morning, Lucien has made his decision. He sends 3 signals. A red cork hung outside the bakery. A smashed bottle left at the co-op gate. A black ribbon pinned to the vineyard's eastern wall. Each signal means the same thing. Collapse the route. It's over. The shipments stop. The barrels disappear. The decoy crates are burned, their ash mixed into soil. The cartwheels are dismantled. The tunnels are sealed, packed with dirt and lime. He leaves one tunnel open, just one, the old Roman path beneath Barrel 9, and in the final hour before dawn, he sets the dynamite charge by hand, wires it, measures it, waits, but doesn't light it. Not yet, not until he knows who's coming through next. Many people still argue about this moment. The vineyard's shut down. Some say Lucien abandoned the cause. Others say he saved it. Some whisper that he never meant to win, only to survive long enough to bury the map. So what do you think? When a man burns his own vineyard to stop a war, is that surrender or strategy? Mid-June arrives with heavy skies and thicker rumors. No more carts roll in. No more crates roll out. For the first time in almost a year, Lucien's vineyard is still. No strange visitors, no missing wine, no coated corks hanging from fence posts. To the villagers, it looks like peace. But Lucien knows better. Stillness is not the same as safety. It's simply the quiet before something worse. He works the fields again. Not because the vines need him, but because his hands do. Every twist of the tendril, every clip of the shears is a small act of defiance against Navarro, against the war, against the man Lucien has slowly, unwillingly become. The cellar remains locked. Even Henri, if he returned, would not find his way back in. But Henri doesn't return. Instead, a telegram arrives, folded once. No envelope. Delivered not by courier, but slid beneath Lucien's door some time before dawn. The bridge is rebuilt. The coin has flipped. Marseille burns. Bordeaux prepares. You have until the end of the week. No signature, but the phrasing is familiar. Not Navarro, not the widow. The voice. They warned him once before. Now they're giving him a deadline. Lucien moves quickly. That night, he returns to the old chapel. Alone. Not to pray, to listen. There, in the far left confessional, behind the same loose stone he once found a message years ago, he finds another. A key. Old, iron, ornate, wrapped in a strip of wine-stained cloth. He recognizes the key instantly. It opens the archive room beneath the old rail depot in Bordeaux. Long defunct, once a coal vault, now whispered about by men who remember how war stores itself in paper first, and powder second. Why is the key here now? because someone wants Lucien to read something or destroy something. Either way, he has to go. By morning, he's packed. No weapons, no crates, just a knapsack with water, bread, and the key sewn into the lining. He boards the 7:42 train to Bordeaux under the name Jean-Loup Renaud, Vintner, recently widowed. No one checks his papers. He arrives by mid-afternoon. The city is unusually tense. New patrols on the streets, ration lines longer than usual, flyers on every wall. Security is everyone's duty. Lucien walks with his hands in his pockets, his steps neither fast nor slow. He doesn't look at the faces. Faces are dangerous now. At the depot, he slips in through a collapsed section of fence and enters the side door, still bearing a rusted "No Trespassing" sign from the last war. Down the stone steps, into the cold. He uses the key. It turns with a groan that echoes like thunder. Inside, a single wooden desk, a candle, a stack of folders bound in twine, and atop them a single sheet of paper. It bears a crest Lucien hasn't seen in years. French Ministry of Internal Affairs, Counterintelligence Division. He opens the first folder. Inside, surveillance photos, not of Navarro, not of Henri, of Lucien. Images from his vineyard, from the market, from the co-op. Notes scribbled in red pencil. Recruited post-war by royalist faction. Disputed. Contact with suspected Catalan arms network confirmed. Source inside suggests deviation from original mission. Status, active. Status, unstable. He turns the page. Another file. Moreau Henri, former courier. Suspected double allegiance. Last seen, Marseille, June 9th. Status, presumed dead. Lucien stops reading. He lights the candle. He burns the folder. One by one, he feeds the pages into the flame until the entire stack is gone. The room fills with smoke and the scent of old ink and lies. He lets it burn. Then he leaves. By the time he returns to Saint-Emilion, the sky is already darkening. Storm clouds roll in. The vineyard smells like ozone and mud. In the distance, he hears thunder, but thunder doesn't knock. The sound at the cellar door is sharp, rhythmic, knuckles on wood. Lucien freezes. 3 knocks, a pause, then one more. He opens the door. Henri, alive, barely. His face is thinner, eyes sunken, coat torn. He looks like a man who's walked from the grave and stopped for wine on the way. Lucien lets him in without a word. Henri collapses into the kitchen chair, pulls something from his pocket, and sets it on the table. A bullet, polished, clean, etched on the side, a small crown. Lucien doesn't ask. Henri answers anyway. "They're done playing," he rasps. "Navarro's gone, or he will be. The rats are eating each other now, but they left one message." Lucien waits. Henri looks up. His voice is hoarse. "They said if the Vintner doesn't finish the story, someone else will." Lucien doesn't respond. He pours 2 glasses of wine. They sit in silence. Thunder rolls again, but this time it sounds like boots, and it's getting closer. Many people still argue over Lucien's visit to the Bordeaux depot. Was he burning the truth or burying it? Did he destroy evidence or erase his own history? And Henri? Did he survive by wit or by betrayal? So, what do you think? If the man who buries the crates also burns the files, is he protecting a cause or erasing it? Rain falls before dawn, steady, patient, the kind that softens everything it touches. It taps the roof of Lucien's house like a slow clock, seeps into the vineyard rows, and hushes the village into a gentle kind of forgetfulness. Even the birds delay their songs. Inside, the kitchen lamp burns low. Henri is asleep at the table, one arm curled over a threadbare map, the other hand clutching the glass he never finished. Lucien stands by the window, unmoving, eyes on the horizon, listening to the world shrink under the weight of the rain. The vineyard looks different this morning, not ruined, not yet, but tired, overgrown in places. The paths too muddy, the fences too soft. the vines stretching too far, as if reaching for something just out of frame. Lucien can feel it now, the story nearing its end, or changing into something else. He walks the cellar steps slowly. No boots, no weapons, just bare feet on old stone. The wine barrels sit in their rows like silent witnesses. Dust gathers on labels that no longer mean anything. No crates remain. No maps. The tripwires have been dismantled. The shelves, once lined with rifles and parts, now hold only tools for bottling. This isn't safety, it's surrender. But Lucien doesn't feel like he's lost. He feels relieved, like the air finally matches the weight in his chest. He moves to the third cellar. Barrel 9 remains, untouched. Inside, dynamite. 2 sticks still live. The wire coiled neatly, the fuse dry. The matchbox tucked beside it like a promise no one ever wanted to keep. Lucien kneels, lights a candle instead. The soft flame dances in the dark. He whispers something to it. Not a name, a memory. Then he stands and closes the barrel for the last time. Above, Henri wakes slowly. There's a letter on the table now, folded, unsigned, in Lucien's handwriting. You live, I stay, let that be enough. Henri doesn't smile. He doesn't cry. He finishes the wine, leaves the letter, and walks out into the rain without a word. No one sees him go. No one ever does. Lucien returns to the vineyard one last time. The sky is gray. The mist clings to the vines. The ground is soft underfoot. He walks each row, brushing his fingers along the leaves, the wood, the wire. Each trellis holds a season. Each post remembers a moment. Here, the spot where the crate was hidden and found. There, where he almost burned the whole thing. He moves like someone saying goodbye, not to people, to place, to a version of himself. By mid-morning, he's in the cellar again. He pulls a single bottle from the 1924 rack, dusty, intact, untouched by the operation. A real bottle, meant for aging, not hiding. He uncorks it. The scent is rich, deep, quiet. He pours a glass, lifts it gently, and whispers, not to toast, not to curse, just to mark the moment. And he drinks, slowly, alone. Outside, the vines sway. No boots march. No gendarmes knock. No Navarro. No priests. No boys with coins in their pockets and riddles in their mouths. Only rain, and the vines, and the wind. In time, the village forgets. The stories shrink. Lucien becomes a whisper, a curiosity, a name on old co-op records. The vineyard continues under new hands. The cellar is never quite the same, but sometimes, just before storms, the locals say they can smell something strange on the wind. Not gunpowder, not blood, something older, like memory. A memory steeped in silence and wine. Now take a breath. The vineyard is quiet now. There are no more footsteps on the cellar stairs, no more crates to count, no more letters left on doorsteps like secrets too heavy to hold. The storm has passed. The barrels rest. The vines sway gently under the gray sky. Everything that needed to happen has. Lucien is no longer watching the road, no longer sealing hidden doors or marking names in the dark. He is still, as he was meant to be, as maybe we all are. In the end, you're safe now. Let the sound of the rain carry you. Let the silence of the vineyard hold you. Let the candle flicker out. Just as you drift off, sleep easy. You've made it through. Sweet dreams. The rain has stopped, but the vineyard holds the weight of it in silence. The ground squelches under Lucien's boots as he makes his way to the old tool shed, the one no one uses anymore. Not even the new workers. It leans slightly now, as if remembering better days. Moss clings to its stone edges, and vines, wild and untrained, have begun to curl around the doorframe. Lucien hasn't opened it in years, not since Isabel. The key is still there, hidden beneath the stone marked with a wine-stained X. He lifts it quietly. The iron creaks in the lock, and when the door swings open, the air inside is damp, earthy, and still. Dust motes spiral like memories. He doesn't come for tools, not really. He comes for what's buried under the floorboards, a rusted tin box, tied shut with twine, wrapped in a child's handkerchief. He carries it back to the cellar without opening it. That evening, he finally lets himself read the letter again, the one Henri left behind in Marseille. Not the short telegram, the real one. The folded note, hidden inside the lining of Henri's coat. Lucien found it while Henri slept days ago, but couldn't bring himself to read it. Not until now. If this ends with me gone, let it be my choice. If it ends with you alone, let it be because you want it to be. And if it ends in fire, light it. Don't wait. Better a vineyard of ash than a legacy of silence. Lucien folds the letter carefully, slips it into the tin box. Inside it already, a pair of Isabel's earrings, a pressed grape leaf from 1923, a map with a single root circled in red, and now Henri's last words. He reburies the box beneath the cellar stones. This time, deeper. He doesn't mark the spot. That night, Lucien receives one final visitor. He doesn't knock. He doesn't speak. Just enters the vineyard gate after sunset. Coat long, hat low, hands in pockets. Lucien is already waiting. They meet by the west trellis. The man looks familiar. Maybe a courier. Maybe an old soldier. He doesn't introduce himself, and Lucien doesn't ask. He hands Lucien an envelope. Heavy. Wax sealed with the crest of La Voix Perdue. Inside, a name. Not Henri's, not Navarro's. Lucien's. Under it, one word, scrawled in red. Exempt. No explanation. No signature. Just a designation. Lucien has been removed from the lists. No more deliveries, no more crates, no more questions. He's been allowed to stop. But that word, exempt, cuts deeper than expected. Because it doesn't mean free. It means set aside. Lucien nods, doesn't speak. The man leaves the way he came. The envelope burns in the hearth before midnight. In the weeks that follow, the vineyard begins to hum again. Real workers arrive. Young men, too clean to know what once passed through the soil. They trim vines, mend fences, seal bottles with real cork and fresh wax. The wine is simpler now. Honest. A little thin, but serviceable. Lucien no longer manages shipments, or messages, or men. He walks. Sometimes the village children wave as he passes. He nods. Once. That's enough. The widow Bordeaux watches from her window, as always, but now she smiles when she sees him. The curtain doesn't twitch anymore. In early July, a letter arrives at the co-op, addressed simply, to the one who stayed. It's unsigned, but Lucien knows the handwriting. Henri, still alive, somewhere. The letter reads, "You were always the quiet one, and I was always too loud. Funny how the ones who shout end up buried by the ones who whisper. Keep whispering. The world forgets fast, but not you. I hope you grow old. I hope the vines forgive you." Lucien folds the letter, doesn't burn it. He places it in the tin box next to everything else. Many years later, when the vineyard changes hands again, a young worker will dig too deep near the western trellis and strike metal. They'll find the tin box, open it, see the leaf, the map, the letter. They'll ask questions. Most will be answered with shrugs, a few with raised eyebrows, and one, quietly, by an old woman in the village who still remembers. "He wasn't just a vintner," she'll say. Then she'll pause. "He was the man who knew when to stop. So what do you think? If the last crate never leaves the cellar, does it still count as part of the war? Or does it finally, mercifully, become wine again?" The summer sun returns without asking permission. It dries the vineyard paths, warms the stone walls of Lucien's cottage, and fills the air with the scent of lavender and dust. The vines stretch tall, unaware of what passed beneath them in colder months. To most, the land looks healed, but Lucien knows better. Healing isn't always visible. The cellar is cooler now, quieter, almost peaceful. No more whispers in the shadows. No more crates with ticking hearts. Only wine again, real wine, and the slow return of routine. Lucian spends most mornings pruning, afternoons bottling. He's begun writing notes again, tasting profiles, soil conditions, projected yields. The kind of meticulous documentation he once used to mask shipments now serves its original purpose. The vineyard has at last returned to wine, and yet there are echoes. One evening, as Lucien checks the seal on a barrel marked Cabernet 1930, he hears it again. Not breathing, not movement. A thud, soft, muffled, from behind the north wall. A place that, in theory, is solid stone. He waits. Nothing follows. No voices, no footsteps. Just that one lonely sound. But he doesn't investigate. Not this time. Because sometimes, noise in an empty house is just that. Noise. And sometimes, it's the past checking to see if it's still welcome. Lucien lets it go. At the co-op, things shift. A new inspector arrives. Older, slower, more interested in actual wine than allegiances. He compliments Lucien's barrels, asks about the 1924 vintage. Lucien lies and says most were lost in the frost. The inspector nods, notes nothing, and orders 6 cases anyway. The vineyard begins selling again. Not much, just enough. Bottles with real cork, real grape, real stories. No whispers folded in the labels, no trails to follow. Just wine. In August, a man with a camera visits. Says he's writing a piece on the Vintners of War, how French soil endures. Lucien lets him walk the property. He even poses for one photo. Hat in hand, boots dusty, vines behind him like history curling up from the ground. The article never prints, but the man sends him a copy of the photo. On the back, a handwritten note. You've aged well. Not just your wine, your legend too. Lucien burns the note, keeps the photo. By harvest season, the workers begin calling him Monsieur Moreau again. The title returns, slowly, earned. They don't ask about the past, but they whisper anyway. They say he once stared down a kernel, hid maps inside barrels, smuggled priests out of the country disguised as brewers. None of it is quite true, but none of it is completely false either. Lucien doesn't correct them, because some myths keep vineyards safer than fences. Then, on the first cold morning of September, a letter arrives, postmarked Tunis. Lucien opens it carefully. Inside, a photo of Henri, older now, beard growing in, eyes squinting into the sun, standing beside a market stall stacked with crates labeled olives, product of Algeria. On the back, still loud, still alive, still not dead in a ditch. Don't forget to prune before winter. I know how lazy you get. H. Lucien chuckles. It's the first real sound he's made all day. He folds the photo, slips it into the tin box, now growing full. One day, someone will find it. Until then, it stays buried. As fall settles over Saint-Emilion, Lucien allows himself a new ritual. Each Sunday evening, he opens a single bottle, one untouched by secrets, codes, or blood. Just grape, barrel, time. He pours one glass, sits at the edge of the vineyard, listens to the wind roll down from the hills. The new workers laugh in the distance. A dog barks, the church bell rings, and Lucien, quietly, finally, feels something like peace. Many still debate the man he became. Was he a smuggler with a conscience? A vintner with a cause? A soldier who found a quieter way to survive? Or just a man with a cellar, trying to make it to the next harvest? So what do you think? If the vines grow back, and the wine still flows, was it worth it? Autumn deepens. The leaves on the vineyard shift from green to gold, then gold to rust. The sun sets earlier now, casting long shadows through the rows. The soil is cool again, the kind that pulls scent from memory. Earth and grape, barrel and blood, all traceable if you've lived here long enough. Lucien has. He walks slower these days. The limp, a quiet souvenir from a winter fall long ago, is a little more pronounced. The cane helps, though he refuses to let anyone see him use it. Each morning he walks the perimeter of the vineyard. It's not just habit, it's a ritual of ownership. a gentle warning to any ghosts still hiding under the soil. This land is watched, and he still remembers where the tunnels lie. One morning near the western fence he finds something odd. A broken cork, half buried in the dirt. Old, but not that old. Too smooth to have weathered a season. Too clean to be from a bottle left to rot. He picks it up, turns it over. On one side, a faint stamp. Not his own. A crest he hasn't seen in years. A candle inside a wine barrel. The old code for la voix perdue. Lucien frowns, pockets the cork. He doesn't report it, doesn't bury it either. He just watches the fence a little more closely after that. That week, the widow Bordeaux passes away, peacefully in her sleep. The funeral is small, quiet. Lucien attends in the back, hat low, hands folded. When the priest mentions her unwavering watchfulness, Lucien almost smiles. After the service, a young man approaches. Late 20s, dark coat, sharp eyes, says he's her nephew. Hands Lucien a package wrapped in linen. "She wanted you to have this," he says, then disappears into the procession. Lucien doesn't open it right away. He waits until nightfall. Then by candlelight in the kitchen, he unwraps the linen. Inside, a small notebook bound in cracked leather, a rosary made from wine-colored beads, a letter. The notebook is a log, years of notes, entries on Lucien, Henri, the vineyard, movements, visitors, even snippets of conversations. She knew everything, but said nothing. The last entry, dated just 3 weeks before her death, is only one line. "He's done enough. Let the soil rest." Lucien reads it twice, then reads the letter. "You were never invisible, Lucien. Just too quiet to stop. I watched you because someone had to. Not to catch you. To remember you. Now I won't remember anything. So be kind to the land. It carries more than roots." He burns the letter, keeps the notebook, not for guilt, for record. A few days later, Emile the blacksmith returns, gray now, stooped, but still swinging a hammer. He helps Lucien mend the old wheelbarrow, and over a slow lunch of bread and sardines says quietly, "They're sniffing around Carcassonne again. Not our kind. The loud ones." Lucien doesn't ask who they are. He knows. "They asked about the old route," Emile says. "About the quiet man who moved wine like it was gospel." Lucien chuckles. "I only ever moved one gospel." Emile grins, "and it was full of bullets." They don't talk about it again. That night, Lucien writes in his own notebook, a list, names of the living, not the dead. Those he saved, hid, misdirected, gave silence to when noise would have killed them. He adds one more at the bottom, Bordeaux, then closes the book. The next morning, a tourist stops by the vineyard. Young, German, eager, clutching a travel journal. Says he's mapping old vineyards with interesting wartime history. Lucien nods politely, offers a bottle, signs the boy's notebook. The boy asks, "Is it true you once smuggled a priest in a barrel?" Lucien tilts his head. "No." "Oh," the boy says, disappointed. Lucien pauses. "It was 2 priests. One had a broken leg." The boy laughs. Lucien doesn't. He smiles, though, a little. Many years later, that story will appear in a travel memoir. It will be embellished, of course. The priest becomes a bishop. The barrel becomes a train. The vineyard becomes a resistance fortress. But at the heart of it, something true will survive. That there was a man, quiet, sharp, watchful, and he kept the war from swallowing his land. Not with guns, with choices. So what do you think? If a vineyard remembers every footstep, what does it mean when it no longer fears the sound of them? The frost comes early. Not enough to kill the vines, just enough to bite. It clings to the tops of trellises like salt dusted on stone, settles in Lucien's beard before the kettle boils, and turns the dirt path to the cellar into brittle crunches beneath his boots. He watches the vineyard from the kitchen window, steam rising from his cup. It all looks so still, but stillness, as Lucien knows too well, is often camouflage. That same day, he receives a package, not by train, not by courier, by post, of all things. Cleanly wrapped, modest in size, addressed in tight, formal handwriting to Lucien Moreau. Saint-Emilion. No return address, no sender name. Inside, a bottle of wine, a folded note, a single spent shell casing. Lucian examines the bottle first. Not one of his. Label in Spanish. The name, Viña del Cierzo, means Vineyard of the Wind. A small producer from Zaragoza. The cork has been resealed with gray wax, stamped with a sigil he doesn't recognize. The note is short. He didn't break. He didn't speak. But he looked north before the end. That was for you. No signature, just a red fingerprint pressed into the paper. Lucian sits back, chest tight. He knows what this is. Henri is gone. And this time, not just missing, gone. He doesn't cry. He pours the wine. The color is dark, almost black. He drinks a sip. It's bitter, rough, unaged. Then he sets it aside, opens the drawer beneath the hearth, and places the shell casing inside, beside the matchbox, the map fragment, and the old rosary from the widow. The drawer no longer holds tools, only truths. That night, Lucian doesn't sleep. He walks the vineyard rows by lantern, whispering names to the wind. Not prayers, just names. Marcel, Navarro, Emile, Bourreau, Henri. The rows listen. That's all he needs. By the time the lantern dies, the stars have come out. One of them, bright, sharp, hangs directly above the third slope. Lucian nods to it, just once. The next morning, he begins what will later be called the final bottling. Only 40 bottles, all hand-sealed, all from the 1924 stock. No labels, only one word, carved faintly into the base of each bottle's neck. Asile, sanctuary. He places them in a crate. No shipment scheduled, no recipient marked. He carries the crate to the old stone crypt near the edge of the vineyard, the one everyone thinks is abandoned. Beneath it, behind the rusted altar, he opens a hollow space and lowers the crate in. When he seals the crypt, it isn't with nails, it's with cement. That wine will never be drunk. It's not meant to be. That week, Pascal the gravedigger returns. They drink in the kitchen, quietly. Pascal says nothing until the second glass. Then, I heard about Henri. Lucian nods. He made it longer than most, Pascal says. He was never supposed to make it at all, Lucian replies. Pascal doesn't ask what happened. He just refills the glass. You think it's over? He finally says. Lucian doesn't answer right away. Then, if it was ever really war, it never ends. It just gets quieter. Pascal leans back. That's the thing about quiet, Lucian. It gets loud eventually. They sit with that for a while. At the end of the month, Lucien receives a letter from Bordeaux. A legal form. Notification of property interest in the vineyard. Not from the state. From a foundation. New. Unknown. They want to buy the vineyard. Turn it into a historical site. Lucian reads the letter once, then tears it in half, then in half again. He throws it in the stove. The flame pops loudly when it hits the ash. That night he walks down to the cellar, touches the barrels, all full now, with actual wine. No secrets, no fire beneath the cork. And yet some part of him still listens, still wonders if the past might knock once more. But it doesn't. The silence stays soft. In years to come, they'll say he never left the vineyard, that he was found one morning in his chair, overlooking the third row, a glass in one hand, a smile on his face. Some say he was buried under the fig tree. Others claim his ghost walks the slope at first frost. But all agree on one thing. His wine tasted different, deeper, as if it remembered something the rest of us had forgotten. So what do you think? If a man leaves no monument but the silence he built, was he forgotten or remembered exactly as he hoped? The first snow falls on a Thursday, light, gentle, almost shy, like a guest testing the mood of a house before knocking. It dusts the vineyard rows in soft white, clings to the tops of the trellises, and settles into the crevices of the stone wall that wraps around Lucian's land like an old promise. The vines, long since pruned, stand bare and bristling beneath the gray sky. Lucian sits at the kitchen table, pen in hand, working through an inventory he no longer needs to keep. The cellar is full. The co-op is stocked. No crates are hidden, no barrels sealed with codes. And yet he counts, still counts, Because routine, like silence, is a kind of anchor, and anchors keep a man from drifting too far into memory. By noon, the snow has thickened, the hills blur, the road disappears. Even the markers at the vineyard's edge vanish beneath the white. Lucien doesn't light the stove. He layers his coat, steps outside, and walks to the edge of the vineyard, where the trellises meet the tree line. Here, beneath the sleeping fig tree, a marker stands, small, wooden, unlabeled. He brushes the snow from its face, revealing only an etched shape. A single grape cluster, carved by hand, uneven and deep. Henry's marker. Lucien doesn't know if the body is there. He only knows that this is where the war ended, at least for him. And that's enough. He leaves a cork on the ground beside it. Nothing written, just left open, like a door. Back in the house, a letter waits, from Geneva. The handwriting is unfamiliar but precise. Inside, to Lucien Moreau. We recently acquired partial records regarding a series of border operations active between 1929 and 1932. A name appears frequently, yours. If you would be willing to speak, we believe history should hear your side. Respectfully, C.R. Fournier, Historical Correspondence Archivist Institute for Quiet Conflict, Geneva. Lucien sets the letter down, reads it twice, then places it on top of the stove without lighting it. He doesn't burn it. He just lets it rest. A question he chooses not to answer. That evening, he walks the vineyard again. Alone, snow to his calves now. The wind cuts sharp through the vines. He doesn't bring a lantern. The moon is enough. And the silence. The silence by now has become something holy. He walks not just to watch, but to listen. And tonight, he hears something strange. A sound he hasn't heard in years. Laughter, faint, carried on the wind. Young, joyful, real. He turns toward it, sees no one, but he smiles, because it means one thing. The land is no longer feared. Children are playing again. Near the vineyard, in the snow, no one is watching for signals anymore. No one is measuring footsteps. The vineyard has been returned. Not sold, not claimed, just returned. To the living. Back inside, Lucien opens a bottle from 1923. Only 4 remain now. He pours a glass. The cork makes no sound. He drinks it slowly, each sip a page turned back, each swallow a line erased. In the final ledger, now reduced to a small black book kept by the hearth, he writes one last note. No shipments this winter, just snow. He closes the book, slides it into the drawer, turns out the lamp. So what do you think? If history doesn't ask you to speak, and you choose silence anyway, is that erasure or grace? February brings more snow, and a letter that almost goes unopened. It's tucked among bills and wine orders, its envelope plain, its handwriting unassuming. Lucien sets it aside for 2 days, forgetting, or perhaps pretending to. But eventually, curiosity has its moment. Inside, a single sheet, typed, "To Monsieur Moreau, we are writing to inform you that a plaque has been placed at the site formerly known as the Col de la Nive Crossing. It bears no names, only this inscription. Here, many passed, some with crates, some with faith, all with silence. If this was yours, we thought you should know. No name, no return address, no contact number." Lucien folds the letter, doesn't smile, just places it in the drawer with the others. The war has its monuments now. It took long enough. A few weeks later, the soil begins to thaw. Lucien kneels beside the vines with the ease of long practice. His back protests. His knees crackle. But his fingers are still deft, still gentle. He clips, turns the shoot, brushes frost from the root collar. This vine, this specific one, he remembers. It stood over the first crate Henri ever buried here. Long gone now, but the vine remained. And this year, it looks strong. He moves to the next. One morning, a child appears at the vineyard gate. Girl, 10, maybe 11. Wild hair. A scarf wrapped twice around her neck and a school satchel on one shoulder. She doesn't say a word, just stares. Lucien walks over slowly. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a bottle. Not one of his, but close. Too close. It's from Navarro's old network. A counterfeit label once used to smuggle crates through the Narbonne post station. Lucien takes it gently, examines the wax. Gray, but cracked. Inside, the bottle is empty, except for a scrap of cloth. Wrapped around it, a photograph of Henri, younger, healthier, standing beside a donkey cart, arms crossed, grinning like a man with too many secrets and not enough time. On the back, one word, forgiven. Lucien exhales. Not a sigh, not a sob, just breath. Old, slow breath. He looks at the girl. She shrugs. Was in my grandmother's attic, she says. Didn't know who he was, but she said to bring it here. Lucien nods. He walks to the third cellar, opens the drawer, places the photo next to the casing, the rosary, the matchbox, then turns to the girl. You like grapes? She nods. He hands her a bunch, clipped fresh that morning. She leaves skipping. Lucien stands in the doorway for a long time after that. In the evenings, he begins writing again. Not logs, not codes. A book, not for publishing, not for passing on, just for the record. He titles it, Notes Between Frosts. The chapters are odd, fragmented. The barrel with no bottom. The widow's curtain, a gun named Grace. How to hear footsteps in stone. Each page is quiet, sparse, measured. It's not the truth exactly, but it's what remains when truth stops asking to be remembered. A letter arrives from Spain. Different handwriting, formal. Monsieur Moreau. A vineyard near Zaragoza was sold last month. In its cellar, we found several bottles sealed in wax, untouched. Inside one, a map fragment. And a note. If it reaches you, it means I didn't. Signed with an H. We are returning it to you. For history. Or for closure. Whichever fits. The map arrives 3 days later. Lucien doesn't open it. He doesn't need to. He knows the route. Knows it by heart. That spring, a journalist stops by. Wants to write a feature on legacy vineyards. Lucien declines politely. But before the man leaves, he asks one last question. Did you ever hide anything in the barrels? Lucien looks out over the field, smiles. Everything. The journalist laughs, scribbles something in a notebook, and disappears down the hill. That night, Lucien lights a candle. No wine, just the flame, and a chair, and silence, as if waiting for someone who's late, or never arriving, but still worth setting the table for. So what do you think? If the past is no longer knocking, but the cellar light stays on, is that memory or hope? Spring arrives not with a fanfare, but with a whisper. The vineyard wakes in slow stretches, buds unfurling from twisted arms, bees resuming their lazy circuits, and the soil warming under a sun no longer suspicious. There's a rhythm again, one Lucien trusts, if only because it doesn't demand anything, and yet something nags at the edges, a feeling, like someone left a door open somewhere in the past. He spends more time by the northern wall now, the one behind which, decades ago, a single crate vanished during the fire. The missing crate. The one he never found. Never explained. It wasn't just a crate, of course. It was a moment. And like all moments, it never fully stayed buried. That spring, a vine grows unusually fast along the wall. Stronger than the others. Healthier. A different green. Lucien watches it for days before he touches it. When he does, he finds beneath the soil not metal or paper, but glass. A bottle, uncorked, empty, except for a silver coin at the bottom. The kind Navarro once carried, except this one bears a different image. Not a lion, not a crown, a mirror. Lucien turns the coin in the light and sees himself. He doesn't speak of it to anyone. Not Emile, not Pascal, not even the new workers who have begun calling him Master Moreau, with a mixture of reverence and awkward affection. Instead, he takes the coin and places it in a new bottle, seals it, no wax, no label, and stores it in the oldest rack, position 7, row 3, right where Isabel's favorite bottle used to sit. In April, the postman delivers something odd, a box, wooden, heavy, nailed shut. Lucien doesn't recognize the sender. No stamp, no return. He pries it open carefully. Inside, a stack of notebooks, weathered, smelling faintly of salt and engine oil. A folded armband, stitched with a small insignia, a dove clutching wire, and a note. We found these in the walls of an abandoned safe house in Avignon. No names, but someone marked the last page of each with your initials. If they're not yours, forgive us. If they are, don't forget them. A stranger who remembers. Lucien reads the first page. It's Henri's handwriting. Messy, angry, alive. He flips to the back, sees his own mark, yes. But more than that, his corrections, his maps, his labels in margins. These weren't logs, they were instructions, blueprints for survival. Passed between cells, written by many, edited by one. Lucien spends 2 days reading. No one sees him. When he emerges, he's older. Not in body, in certainty. Somehow, what was buried survived. Because someone carried it forward. Because someone remembered. Because silence was not the same as absence. That week, a new worker arrives, young, from Toulouse. Speaks with the casual tone of someone who knows how to watch but chooses when to speak. He works hard, learns fast, but what draws Lucien's attention is the tattoo on his wrist. Small, faded, a grapevine curling around a candle. Lucien doesn't mention it, not until the boy brings him a bottle one evening shyly. Found this in the Eastern storehouse. It's labeled differently. Lucien takes it. The label is hand-drawn, old ink, faded, and there in the corner, a sketch, a mirror, inside a barrel, surrounded by vines. Lucien nods. Well, where did you find this? The boy shrugs. Just waiting, like someone knew you'd want it. Lucien doesn't answer. He uncorks the bottle, doesn't drink, just pours a small amount onto the soil at the base of the nearest vine. A gesture. I'll return. A way of saying, you made it home. Later in the third cellar, he writes again. One more entry in notes between frosts. Some things don't ferment. Some things root. And some return, unasked, with dust and proof. That's how you know you weren't alone. Not really. Many years from now, a historian will mention a man named Lucien Moreau in a footnote. She'll say he tended vines through troubled times, that he was rumored to have been part of a resistance, that his wine was good. But it's the bottles, quiet, unlabeled ones found buried under old beams, that will outlast the words, some with coins, some with maps, and one still sealed with a mirror inside, waiting for someone brave or quiet enough to look. So what do you think? If the war doesn't return, but its artifacts do, is that warning or remembrance? Rain returns to Saint-Emilion like a priest with too much to confess. It falls slow at first, gentle and apologetic, then harder, carving rivulets into the soft vineyard soil and pooling in the dips between the rows. The air turns metallic with petrichor and memory, a scent Lucien knows all too well. This was always the season of missteps, slips in the mud, broken crates, and more than once, betrayal. He tightens his coat, pulls his cap low, and walks the perimeter with steady steps. It's not habit now. It's protection. Not for the vineyard, for the quiet, the silence he earned, the kind he will not trade. A knock comes at dusk. Unusual. No one knocks anymore. People call ahead, or walk in through the back, or wave from the gate. Lucien opens the door slowly. It's a woman, mid-30s. Trench coat soaked through. A leather satchel hugged tight against her chest. She says only, "May I?" Lucien steps aside. He doesn't offer wine. He doesn't need to. She knows why she's here. At the kitchen table, she places the satchel down and opens it with care, like she's unsealing something old and fragile. Inside, 4 photos, a tiny notebook bound with twine, a key. She says her name is Mireille, that her grandfather was a train porter stationed in Angoulême during the early 1930s, that he carried messages hidden in ticket stubs, in coat linings, in hollowed-out loaves of bread. And one day, someone named Moreau passed him a case of wine with nothing inside it but a single compass and a folded route marked only with candle icons. Lucien says nothing. Mireille continues. Her grandfather was caught in 1935. Never spoke. Never named anyone. But in his final letter to his wife, he wrote, "Tell the man with the cellar. The train reached the mountain, the priest was on time, and the wine was good." Lucien closes his eyes. That was Father Armand. The last extraction before the network broke. No one ever confirmed he made it through the Pyrenees. Until now. Mireille slides the key across the table. Do you know what this opens? Lucien turns it over. Old brass. Stamped with a strange code. M7 Sud. Yes, he knows it. A storage vault near Montpellier. Used for overflow during the final push. He remembers locking it in a hurry. The crate was labeled Ashes, a joke Henri made that wasn't really a joke. Lucien never retrieved it. No one did. She pushes the notebook forward next. This was hidden in a wine bottle. Lucien opens it. The handwriting is his, only it isn't. The dates are post-1935. The ink is different. Someone else copied it. But the contents are exact. Map fragments, instructions, relay codes, and, at the very back, a recipe for grape ink that fades under heat. Lucien exhales through his nose, the kind of sound you make when truth circles back. Not to haunt, but to nod. Mireille doesn't ask questions. She just says, I thought you should have it, and stands to leave. At the door, she pauses. My grandfather believed you were the only one who knew how to keep things buried. And still, remembered. Lucien doesn't reply. He just touches the edge of the key in his pocket. That night, he opens in 1925. Not to drink, to smell. The cork pops like an old joint being freed. He holds the bottle under his nose. Inhales. Dust, earth, a hint of stone fruit, and something else. Smoke. He places the bottle back, returns to the table, opens the notebook, and begins writing. This time the entry isn't for the past. It's for what was left behind. Some bottles carry messages. Some carry memory. But the best ones carry forward the silence that kept others breathing. In a few days, Mireille will write an article for a quiet historical journal. Circulation, 400. It will mention an unnamed vineyard, a vanished cellar, a man who may have used barrels like mailboxes. It will be cited once, misquoted twice, and eventually forgotten. But one researcher will follow the trail and find, behind the crumbling vault door in Montpellier, a single crate. Inside, a bottle sealed with black wax, no label, but beneath it, wrapped in cloth, one final map, signed L. So what do you think? If history only finds what was hidden, and you're the one who hid it, does that make you the past, or its architect? Late spring wraps the vineyard in warm gold. The air hums. Not with secrets now, but with bees. The rows are thick with green, the vines heavy with promise, and Lucien's boots crunch softly through the gravel path like they've always belonged there. He's older, slower, but not faded. In fact, some would say he's sharper now than he's ever been, because there's nothing left to prove and everything left to protect. He receives a letter from Paris. This one's official. Government seal, fine cream paper, too many words. They're hosting a memorial symposium on resistance networks, inviting contributors, survivors, family members, ghosts with good penmanship. As Lucien mutters, unimpressed, he folds the letter in half, then uses it to level a wobbly table leg in the back room. The past is honored differently here, with fruit, not flags, with pruning shears, not speeches. That week, the new worker, Jules, the one with the candle tattoo, brings Lucien a parcel. It's wrapped in newspaper, clumsily tied, found buried near the eastern wall beneath a loose stone. Inside, a pocket knife, a whistle made of bone, a strip of cloth embroidered with the name Camille. Lucien holds the cloth for a long time. He remembers Camille. She was a courier, 17, fast feet, sharp mind, vanished in 31. Everyone assumed caught, or worse. But now this, maybe she made it, or maybe she left this as proof she had almost escaped. Either way, Lucien wraps the cloth in linen and places it with the others. The drawer beneath the hearth is full now, not just objects, echoes. One morning, while watching the vineyard from his window, Lucien sees a boy balancing on the stone wall, arms out, wobbling, laughing. For a moment, Lucien's heart spikes. Muscle memory warning him of scouts, shadows, danger. Then the boy jumps down, harmless, just a kid, and Lucien exhales. It's over. It really is. That afternoon, He finally unlocks the trapdoor beneath the second barn. It hasn't been opened since 1933. Inside, nothing dangerous. Just dust, old rope, some warped floorboards, and a wooden box with one word carved deep. Listen, he doesn't open it. He just carries it out to the fig tree, places it at the roots, and lets it stay. The next day, he finds himself writing again. Not memoirs. A letter. To no one in particular. If you're reading this, you've found what I didn't bury to hide, only to hold. This land remembers more than I do now. But know this, we weren't brave. We were just careful. And sometimes that was enough. He doesn't sign it. He tucks it behind a loose brick in the cellar wall. Someday, someone will find it. Maybe they'll nod. Maybe they'll pour a glass. Or maybe they'll just sit for a moment in the quiet and wonder what it took to earn such peace. The bees hum louder this year. The grapes grow fat with promise. And Lucian every morning walks the rows and listens, not for danger, for absence, and finds at last it is complete. So what do you think? If a vineyard once whispered warnings, and now only hums, has it forgotten or forgiven? Summer settles in with a slow, honeyed breath. The vines, lush and coiled, stretch confidently toward the sun. Every morning, dew clings to their leaves like secrets refusing to let go. And Lucian walks between the rows with hands behind his back, nodding as though inspecting an army at rest. But the war is done. The vineyard doesn't need guarding anymore. Now it just needs tending and remembering. The villagers talk more openly now, about the old days, about rumors, about the Vintner who once outran the border patrol with nothing but a corkscrew and a mule. Lucian never confirms anything. He just chuckles, refills their glasses, and pretends not to notice when their children sneak grapes from the low branches. Some memories, after all, are sweeter when they ripen into myth. One late afternoon, Lucian visits the third cellar for what he quietly knows might be the last time. He lights a small lantern. Dust swirls like candle smoke in the air. He moves slowly through the aisles, pausing now and then to touch a bottle, trace a scrawl in chalk, adjust a weathered crate like an archivist in a forgotten museum. At the far end, he kneels before the low stone wall. Behind it lies the first crate ever hidden. It's still there, still sealed. He places a small wooden cork atop it, carved simply with the year, 1929, then rises, nods once, and leaves the light burning. That evening, he prepares a meal, simple and deliberate. Bread, cheese, one tomato, and a glass of wine from the last 1924 bottle. As he eats, the sun lowers over the western ridge, casting long gold slats across the kitchen floor. Outside, the vineyard glows like something sacred. Inside, Lucian leans back in his chair. He doesn't speak. He doesn't write. He just listens to birds, to bees, to nothing urgent. Night falls slow and warm. Lucian slips into bed, the window open to let the breeze in. A fan hums gently from the corner. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then gives up and curls beneath the porch. Lucian closes his eyes. The dream, when it comes, is familiar. He's standing in the vineyard, but the vines are taller than usual. Over his head, between the rows, figures move, blurred but calm. One hands him a cork, another, a bottle, another, a compass. Then someone laughs, soft, the way Henri used to. Lucian doesn't turn. He just laughs too, and walks forward. The next morning, the sun rises as always, but the house is quiet, truly quiet. Pascal finds him just after breakfast, still in bed, peaceful, glass empty on the table, window still open, notebook on the shelf closed, and one last cork on the windowsill unmarked. The vineyard carries on, the grapes grow, the bottles fill. New hands work the soil, learning the rhythm. Sometimes they find things, a drawer with old items, a map hidden behind a brick, a coin beneath a vine. They don't always understand, but they leave them in place, out of respect. And once a year, on the first frost of winter, someone lights a candle at the old fig tree. No ceremony, no speech, just light, soft, unblinking. So what do you think? If a man ends without fanfare, but his vineyard continues to hum, did he vanish? Or did he arrive? Now, let's let the vineyard fade for a moment. Imagine the vines still, wrapped in silver moonlight, the barrels at rest, the cellar sealed, and the door to the past gently closed. You're standing on the gravel path, barefoot, feeling the last warmth of the day stored in the stones beneath you. The air smells faintly of grapes and time. Somewhere in the distance, the wind brushes through the olive trees, soft like a sigh. You hear it move, not with urgency, but memory, like it's not trying to go anywhere, just circling back one last time. Maybe Lucian is still there, not in the cellar, not in the house, but in the way the rows curve just so, in the way the silence feels deeper than quiet. Not empty, just full of something you can't name. You take one last look back. You nod. You understand now why nothing needed to be explained, because peace doesn't ask questions, and history, when handled with care, becomes something more than truth. It becomes shelter. Now let your thoughts slow, like vines after the harvest. Let them drop, one by one, into the stillness. The vineyard will be here when you wake. But for now, rest.